What's up? What's happening? Welcome in. Good morning. It is the Take Command pregame show. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen with you on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. Also streaming live on YouTube here from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor, where doors open for you to come hang out with us an hour from right now. And Logan, it has been a noisy week in Ashburn as the Commanders get set to take on the Philadelphia Eagles today. Noise can be good, it can be bad, you can block it out, you can have it destroy you as a team. The possibilities are endless. But it's a week where the Commanders return home, where they have not particularly played well this year. The crowd, I feel like, is going to be very antsy. You've got trade rumors flying. Like, as a player entering this kind of game, I feel like the most likely outcomes are you rally and you kind of play almost over your level, or this is the thing that kills you and you just totally implode. Of course, something else in the middle could happen, but I don't know how many of these games you've played in as a player where it felt like so much was on the line, and kind of existentially too, with coaching rumors and all these things, because new ownership obviously adds that layer. So there's so much going on here. I could spend another 10 minutes setting up a question to you, but people get it. What's it like to be a player in this pressure cooker kind of scenario?
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's really challenging, and it depends, what kind of team you're on and the environment you're in. Like I was in this similar spot when I was in Atlanta in, 18, 17, and it is challenging, but like the leadership of the players was so strong that you didn't really you knew what was happening, but it was pretty insulated. And then there was here in 13, I want to say, when it was really bad. That was like Mike's last year.
Yeah, Mike's last year.
And that was like, there was just so much stuff, and it was so ominous. And like, thank God I was pretty ignorant of it at the time. But looking back, I remember thinking like, that's why people are kind of like aloof, or that's why this guy said this in the locker room. And so I think this environment here with the Commanders at the moment is not unique, because the teams go through this all the time, but it does feel like it's definitely tilting a little bit more towards 2013 in terms of all of kind of the adversity that's coming, the players' comments. So it makes me a little bit, I don't know, nervous for the game today, because it does feel like it's kind of this, you said existential, but like this tipping point moment where there's all this kind of negative pent-up, whatever that is, aggression, animosity, rumination, worry, whatever it is. And if the game goes poorly, then it kind of, the dam breaks, and then that's what characterizes the rest of your season. So
right.
And I don't want to be like negative. That's just kind of the vibe you're getting. I mean, think about what John said. Think about what Terry said. Imagine being Montez, Chase, or Gibson at the moment right now, and everybody on Twitter is talking about you get traded. Like, it's hard to play good football with that looming over your head. So just think there's a lot going on, and that's tough. It's tough to stay focused, and it's. If they were playing anybody else but the Philadelphia Eagles, I'd be like, man, maybe you feel a little bit different about it. But the Philadelphia looks dialed in. They look ready to go. And there's all this adversity over here for the Commanders. So it'll be an interesting day today for sure.
Yeah. Then again, the Eagles seem to have fits with the Commanders.
Yeah, 100%.
This is a team that has played them as well as anyone over the last couple of years. So who the hell knows? As Chris Berman loves to say, that's why they play the games.
You're Chris Berman. We need to work on that a little bit.
It's he's not on TV as much anymore. I don't watch him as much. It's not as fresh.
I know. It's when you were watching a lot, it felt really like
it felt like I was dialed in. I need to do more film study. You keep watching X's and O's. I'm gonna go watch old episodes of NFL Primetime.
That was awesome though. He did a great job with that show.
Yeah, it's legendary sports television. Yeah. I think it's interesting in so many ways today, as we've been saying. But for Sweat and Young, two guys that definitely, there is a report, Nikki Javala from the Washington Post was the first to have it. Others, John Kine, Ben Stanek, have confirmed. There's a firm offer on the table for Montez Sweat. And a lot of people tend to lean in the direction that what happens today shouldn't matter. Like, they should make a move if it's a good deal no matter what. Like, be realistic with yourself.
Sure.
But they're going to be 4-4 if they win today. And I find it really hard to believe, unless they think that, hey, we actually almost played better cohesively if we have just one of those two guys on the end, that they're going to make a trade if they were to win today. So it does feel like there's a lot on the line on that side of it. I don't think you were ever subject to trade rumors in your career.
No. But, like to me, I would probably make a comparison like the third or fourth preseason game for me. You know, like when your future is kind of in flux and it's this moment, this weird moment. And obviously my flux was caused by different reasons, but he's a good football player. People want him. And I think to those, like the article that Nikki wrote, obviously we've mentioned this on the show before. Anytime the price is right, you make the move, right? Nobody is more valuable than a good deal, in my opinion. And as much as you want to say, like this person's a cornerstone, this person's XYZ, if someone comes out there, this is hypothetical, obviously, and I don't think this would ever happen with Montez, not because he's not a good player, that just because of the nature of the trade deadline. But here's a second round pick this year and a 2025 fifth or something. You jump at that opportunity.
Yes, call it into the league, please.
Yeah, just because the value is so good. And I think the thing that you're going to run into if you're the Commanders is that what is good value for him? And I think, you hear a lot around like that third round pick. And to me, I don't know if that's worth it, honestly. Like that's where it's kind of like the tipping point is, because he's such a dynamic player, because he does so much for you this year. Is that third round pick worth it? I know he's not under contract. I know all those things, but that's the thing that I always kind of come back to is like what is good value for him would be my question, and that's the thing that I always am thinking about with this trade deadline and whether it's the right move for the team.
Yeah, so that gets actually to kind of the Josh Harris part of this, and I think Keim did a really good job explaining this on his podcast. Here's your weekly first segment shout out to John Keim. But Cakes did a really good job with this on his podcast, talking about like how the process will go with Josh Harris. Because I think people think that there's kind of two extremes, that either you're going to do what Dan Snyder used to do, which is march into the room and tell everybody what to do while you're employing all these people to make these decisions for you, or you stay completely removed. And what it sounds like with Harris is he's a guy that is potentially going to be in the room asking a lot of questions.
Right.
Like he will ultimately make,
which is what you want, I think.
100%, especially if a guy's really good at asking those kinds of questions. Right. And you'd think the way that Josh Harris built his fortune, being critical in decision making is kind of essential to the type of business he was in the finance world. So asking the right questions, really making you make your case for the value of a certain decision one way or the other, and that could influence how ultimately, I guess Martin Mayhew's going to be the one on the phone. Ron Rivera is the chief decision maker, how those guys act this week. So I think that's an interesting perspective, because there is, I guess worry is the right word among the fan base, that like, well, Ron's going to do what he needs to do to win now because his job's on the line as head coach. And, do you want that guy being in charge of personnel? And Ron, to his credit, has always said, like, I'm trying to build this thing for the long term. Sure. Whether I'm here or not. He made the comment that I think a lot of people kind of scoffed at, of like, if they win a ring in a couple of years, like, send me mine because I set them up. But there
is something, there is something to that. I don't know.
To at least being a good steward of the franchise. And that's always what I've said. Is like, if this is it for Rivera this year or next year, whenever, like, he's made a lot of interesting roster decisions, to say the least, but he has been a good steward of the franchise, and that's worth something. But to this week, it does sound like he will be, like, the dictate from ownership will be do the right thing for the long-term health of the franchise. And I think one of the things when we kind of combine that together of the long-term or some of the roster decisions that are interesting or playing themselves out as poor the way things are going right now is overloading certain positions. Yeah. Like they've drafted at positions where they've got a surplus of players already, and then you have high-value draft picks not playing, or you have too much money invested in one position, and obviously the biggest example of that is the defensive line. Sure. And so I do think that, like, a third-round pick for Montez Sweat, of course you'd love to get more if you could.
Obviously, yeah.
But considering you need to unload someone in that group anyway, if you can get that pick now and start that reload process with an extra third-rounder in the 2024 draft versus what is essentially a fourth-rounder, a compensatory pick in 2025 if you lose him in free agency, I just think you need to kind of pick whether that's going to be Montez or Chase, or do you both? Yeah. Like, who knows?
Yeah. No, and I think that's why this is kind of an interesting time, because there's so much uncertainty. In some ways, it's more helpful, like as a player, when it's like, oh yeah, this is happening on Monday. Like, get your mind right or whatever. And I don't know how you play a game like again, like I knew when I was in Atlanta my last year there that I was going to get cut, and you still got to go out and play the 4th preseason game, and your heart's kind of half in it, and you're thinking about other stuff. So I'd imagine that's going to be a pretty, because according to Keim, like the player that's like most likely that has the most concrete offer is Montez. So he's the guy that's kind of experiencing that the most dramatically.
And just to add detail to that, part of the thing with Chase is there's definitely interest, but teams are still wondering like how healthy is he?
Yeah.
What's the projection on him, which makes him very hard to value.
Sure, 100%. And I think, so I think it's probably pretty challenging for him. And again, I think you articulated that very nicely. There's what is value, what's best for the organization. These are all decisions that need to be made, and maybe it looks differently if you win this football game. I don't know, because I do think you still have an opportunity to like make a push here. I think people are freaking out because there's been 2 bad losses in this sequence here, but they're 3-4. You're 4-4. You're in a division. You've won a division game against maybe the class of the division. Like there's a lot of good things here to be thinking about. And like I've been a part of teams. Like I think we were 3-6 or something like that when I was here with the Commanders in 2012. And I'm not saying that's not. It's different teams, and I hate when people make that comparison. But it's just one of those. You are not in too far of a hole just yet. So don't. I know fans want to freak out and be whatever they are about it. So, but just keep that in mind, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely. Take Command pregame show here on a burgundy and gold game day. One interesting thing about Ron Rivera that we'll get to kind of as we go here, he has certainly had these stretches in the middle of the season where he gives you hope. It's been bad at the start, good in the middle, bad at the end. A good football sandwich or a bad football sandwich, depending on how you want to label it. Each of his years here, why does that happen? And, is there a chance that that happens again this year, at least on the middle part? And then, can they finally figure out the end? We'll discuss that as we go. Coming up next, though, we will take a closer look at the game itself and kind of the X's and O's and how it sets up for Washington and Philadelphia today. We'll take a look at the Washington offense and a Philadelphia defense that they had their best game against, but I think is going to play pretty differently today. I'll explain. Logan will give his thoughts next. It's the Take Command pregame show here on a burgundy and gold game day. Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor on 106.7 and The Fan and the Team 980s, Burgundy and Gold game day. This might be a multiple caffeine intake day for me, Logan. What can I tell you?
I mean, that's what happens when you're like young and busy and living your
doing
best life.
Stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we did have a friend's engagement party last night. We were also home by 9:15.
Yeah,
so,
it's like you're young and old at the same time.
Yeah, that is a great description of my current status in life. Young and old at the same time. All right, Commanders' offense today against the Philadelphia defense that it has had success against, and we talked about this on our Take Command podcast. The Eagles' defense most weeks looks very similar to the Commanders' defense schematically. It is a cover 3 match heavy system, so single high safety. There's some space to operate in. They're looking to stop the run. They've got a good D-line. They use those things to their advantage. They don't blitz a ton because they do have that good D-line. Like, there's a lot of similarities.
Yep.
As a result, the Commanders have some familiarity and have been able to, the last couple of years, and including in the first game, take advantage of some things that feel familiar. And it's like, hey, cool. We know how to attack this.
Yep.
Which leaves a very interesting question for the Philadelphia Eagles today, which is, do we not do that anymore? Last week, they played a lot of 2-high structures, cover 2, cover 4, shells against the Miami Dolphins, and they did it because the Dolphins have more team speed than anyone else in the league, but it's also a schematic structure that kind of begs teams to run the football against you, limits big plays, and the Commanders have struggled to run the football this year. And not only have they struggled to do it, they don't want to do it. They have more drop-back passing attempts than any team in the NFL. So if you're the Philadelphia Eagles today, you've seen that. You've just spent a week practicing something else. Mm-hmm. Do you just carry that something else over into this week and make the Commanders do the thing they don't want to do?
Yeah, I don't know. That's the $1 million question. That's one of the reasons I get so excited to watch this game, because like when you study it enough, you're like, oh, well, like they could do this and they could move this piece and they could make this happen. And part of me thinks that they're just going to go back to what they do well. You know, like why mess with it? It's been very successful for them throughout the year. Like I know it's not been maybe the most like efficient defense of all time. You know, there is air, they give up plays, but they also make a ton of plays too. They've got really good corners and that are maybe not playing the best football of their careers, but they're playing well enough.
I know, by the way, they have a brand new shiny toy at safety.
100%.
Kevin Byard, if you missed it, they traded this week. The Eagles did. Kevin Byard, the Tennessee Titans safety, now former Titans safety, is one of the best in football.
Yeah, 100%. And so, you know, maybe you do feel good going back to those single high structures. And I don't know. It just depends. But I think that defenses that are pretty consistent, I'm always like, why change? If that's what you feel good with, if that's what you know really well, your defensive line's playing well. Is Jordan Davis healthy today, by the way?
He was questionable. I think he got hurt in practice on Thursday, and there was a DNP on Friday, which often means like that's not a good sign. So we'll see what we can figure out the latest on him.
Yeah, well, he's one of the best defensive players, and so if he doesn't play, maybe you feel like you need to change some stuff up. I don't know, but I just think like good defenses stay who you are. You know what I'm saying? Don't change it. Like I think one of the reasons the Commanders' defense is kind of slowly changing each week is because they hadn't really found themselves. In the last week against the Giants, I thought they did a great job of kind of establishing an identity. I think the Eagles already have that. That's why you don't need to do too much. I think you brought something interesting up on the podcast this week about do you pressure more? And that's something I really think, because you can pressure from a single high structure and you can feel really good about it. And that's something I think would be good for them. If I'm them, that's one thing. I don't know if I play the 2 high structures as much, but I get in my single high structure and I'm like, hey man, let's see if they've figured out this protection stuff, because each and every week, obviously, the Commanders have struggled with, 4-man rushes. They struggled with 5-man rushes. They struggle with overload pressures. Like, I would just, kick the tires on that. And that seems like a little bit easier in terms of, like, changing everything you want to do. But maybe they do come out in the 2-safety structure because they have another week of practice that. I don't know. But that's one reason why you watch the game and why it's fun to watch the game, because what's their reaction to what we did based on the first matchup, so.
Yeah, no, I think that's smart. And I don't think that, obviously, the Eagles are just going to copy the Giants' game plan. Like, they're not going to install a zillion blitzes this week. But can you find 1 or 2 that you really like and run them a bunch?
Yeah.
And that gets to, obviously, the changes for the Commanders this week, which is Tyler Larson is expected to start at center. You'll have either Ricky Stromberg or Chris Paul. My guess would be Chris Paul. A
Me
lot
too.
of people think it might be Stromberg because he's the one that's been active, but I think that's a position flex thing. I think he's been active because if someone goes down at center or at guard, he can play any of those positions. Chris Paul limited to just guard. So I think that you'll see Chris Paul active and starting today with Stromberg as the backup to both spots. But what does that do for this line? Like, I mean, I would have to go back to the preseason tape and see how someone like Chris Paul handles stunts and twists and games up front, because that's the thing that I think, we talk about the pressures. Installing a blitz is labor intensive. Running stuff you already run more, simple twists, stunts, games up front, that's something that Philadelphia does. And if I'm watching that tape, Mark Schler talked about this with me on Friday on the radio show, like I'd run one all the time because they could not, the Commanders, pick that up, not just last week, but it's been a problem all season.
Sure.
However, the they is now different theys. Like Larson and Paul is different doing that than Gates and Sadiq Charles.
100%.
So how does that look in terms of that interior offensive line play this week?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I think Chris brings some like a different skill set than Sadiq. I think Sadiq's a much better mover. I think he's a much more like twitchy, explosive athlete. But I also think Chris is a very powerful human being. And I think when you see him put hands on people, you see his strength, you see his explosiveness like in a different way than kind of like more of a strongman type strength as opposed to an Olympic lifter type strength for those of you who know the difference. But I do think that power showed up in the preseason a little bit. It was great to see, especially against really good competition. The thing that I would say about Chris that gives me a little bit of concern is that he's very raw mentally when it comes to playing offensive line from a pass protection standpoint. I think run game, it seems very natural for him, and I think you'll see a little bit of an uptick there in terms of a guy who can sit on combinations and move people off the ball. I think that's going to be helpful. However, in pass protections, like you can see it in the preseason when he's in a slide. Let's say we're sliding left. He doesn't know when I need to help the center. Sometimes he oversets or he doesn't set enough towards the help of the slide. And those are things that come with experience, and he might have gotten better at it. He's had 8 weeks of practice basically since the last time we saw him. But that's one thing that I would be just kind of circle that. I think in a one-on-one situation when, hey, Chris, block that guy, he's excellent, right? He's very good at it. But when it's, hey, you're part of a slide, we've got a 3-man rush here, how do we push this off? How do we work together? Because I think that was one of the criticisms that came out about him during camp is like, yeah, physically, you love the strength, you love the power, but that other little nuance to his game is tough. I do think moving Tyler to center is going to be a nice move here. Because one of the issues that they had against the Giants was we talked about it on our film review pod, was the difficulty in identifying who the rushers were and what was going on. I think that was a huge issue, and I also think there's been a little bit of an issue in terms of targeting runs correctly. I think they block them well, but obviously there's times where I'm like, they have an extra hat in this look. They need to take that target one person back, and I think Tyler, with all of his experience at center, will help with that, help with the targets, help with the pass protection, and that's ultimately, I think, why you're making the switch to put Tyler in there, is just to kind of shore up that whole deal.
Also a little more stout as a blocker as well.
He's a big man, yeah. I think for a center, he's like 325 pounds. He's a big guy.
Yeah, huge.
And so, you bring in two guys who maybe aren't quite as athletic as the two guys that were in there before. I think Nick Gates is a good athlete at center, and I think Sadiq's an excellent athlete at guard. But, you get kind of two bigger, thicker, heavier bodies in there, and I think maybe you see a positive result. So
yeah, maybe it allows you to call some different protections, and the calling of those protections is essential. And it's something that, depending on what happens this week, like I might have to make a field trip, Logan. I might have to go out to Ashburn and ask some questions this week.
Ask and get a non-answer.
Yeah, probably. But I would ask, maybe I'll ask Ron after the game. That I'll be there. So I think one of the things that's interesting in looking at, there's a guy who used to work, he's under like a pseudonym on Twitter, but he used to work for the Eagles back in the Andy Reid days. And he's super familiar with this offense. And he had a great, it's at Honest NFL if you're on Twitter, which I deleted from my phone this weekend. I'm just like, this is crazy. We're not doing this. We're going to go on. I'll tell you more about that after in the commercial break. The point is, this guy had a great thread of, like, in this particular situation, this protection could have been changed to this, or
wow,
in this situation, like, it's pretty easy to see that it's cover 3 before the snap, or it's pretty easy to see that it's man-to-man. And actually, the way we used to do it in a read system, a read Peterson Bieniemy system, quarterback should have changed the play. And so, like, one of the questions I have is, what freedom are they giving Sam Howell to get them into good plays in the first place?
That's a great question.
And get them out of some of these bad looks that are resulting in some of the pressures. Like, some of these are DOA. Yeah. And there's also times, there was one last week that I think a lot of people put on the O-line that he said, I'd put this on Howell, because while it looks like he gets hit as soon as he hits his back foot, it should have been a 3-step drop instead of a 5. And so, like, there's these incredibly nuanced things, which I only bring up to say this. There's a lot happening here. You have a young quarterback. You've had a relatively inexperienced offensive line. You have a first-year play caller. They're all learning each other. We don't know how much of this offense is in, how much freedom Sam has. But there are a lot of the good news, I guess I would say, is there's a lot of potential solutions. And obviously we'll see if just a sheer change of personnel today is enough to help stem some of the run game issues and some of the sack problems that have been going on up front, no matter whose fault they are. When we get back, Kevin Sheen joins us here on the Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day. Take Command pregame show on a burgundy and gold game day. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen. That was good, Logan, on the YouTube stream. Right as I said your name, you sat down and magically appeared in the frame.
That's what we're looking for.
It's actor, TV star over here. Logan Paulsen joining us now, the great Kevin Sheen, host of The Kevin Sheen Show, The Kevin Sheen Show podcast as well. Mr. Sheen, good morning, sir.
What's up, gentlemen?
Oh, just getting ready for whatever this is about to be. Which, I keep going back and forth, to be honest, Kevin. So. It feels like Logan said 2013, I said 2019. Those are our two frame of references. Him as a player, obviously, in 2013. The Shanahans last year, where it all went south. Me, 2019 with Jay, where it all went south. It feels very reminiscent of that. But throughout the Ron Rivera era, every time we've had this feeling, they go out and win. So how are you feeling going into today?
Well, this isn't comparable. I mean, this season's already been Super Bowl-esque because Dan sold the team. So the bleakness that came with 2009, the end of the Zorn debacle, 2013, as you mentioned, 2019, those were no-hopers beyond the season because it was still owned by Dan, and there were other people, like at one point Vinny Serrato in the organization and Bruce Allen. So I think most fans that had any level of intellect knew that we had to sort of push aside reality to root for the team, because the reality was, as long as Dan owned it, they would never win because it was so poorly managed. So I don't think this is anywhere near those things at all. But as it relates to trade deadline and Rivera's, more likely than not, the final, 10 or 11 games he will coach, and a lot of people will be in this organization. I understand that, and I think that, Logan would be able to speak to this better, but does that become a distraction for the team? Does all of the conversation about Chase Young and Montez Sweat and Kendall Fuller and anybody else, does it become a distraction for a team who, in any other city at 3-4, you're like, yeah, if they win, let's go have ourselves a season. Let's try to get to 9 wins and snag the 7 seed. And it doesn't feel like that this team has that kind of capability, and I think people are ready for the restart.
Yeah, so, obviously you talked about kind of the Super Bowl element there with Dan selling the team, but, in terms of this season, do you think this season there's still legs here, or are you kind of, getting ready to move on to 2020, whatever you were in, 24?
I don't know. Last week, the first half last week was so hideous to watch.
Yeah.
Just the idea that an offensive football team in the NFL could generate just 46 yards on 26 plays on 8 drive opportunities, which is unheard of. They had 8 opportunities at the football, and they punted 7 times and threw an interception. That's like Power 5 against a 1AA kind of a thing. And that was really discouraging for me on a lot of fronts, because it brings into question whether or not the offensive coordinator is really capable, the quarterback's capable, the head coach who constructed the roster and made some of these moves. So, yeah, to answer your question, even if they were to pull off a win today, which to me is not completely out of the realm of possibility, it's the NFL, I think we all know where this would be headed. It's headed to, 7-10, 8-9 kind of a thing.
As for the trade deadline part of it, Kevin Sheen, of course, Kevin Sheen Show, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. weekdays on the Team 980. Are you of the thought that you think today shouldn't matter, or if you're 4-4 at the end of the week, do you hold on to everyone and say, hey, I know the schedule is hard, but we don't know what's going to happen. Let's find out.
Here's what we don't know. We don't know what the offers are. That's a rather critical piece of information, because if there's real compensation being offered that would really be a future asset for an organization that's not a contender this year, and, it's for a player that potentially you may not re-sign, you've got to move that player win or loss. I don't understand why this is the influencer today's game, and I certainly don't understand why they seem to be okay with the information being out there. I think this has been an issue forever, right? They just talk too much. And every, report for the last 24 to 48 hours about the trade deadline includes something about Washington's plan to make their decision after today's game. Well, that's not a leverage enhancer. Hey, if we lose, by the way, it's discount Monday. So come and give us whatever you want to give us, and we'll take it. That bothered me a little bit. But I don't know, Craig, before these games start, I always get into that mode of, all right, let's go win this game and see what 4-4 brings. The NFC is certainly wide open. Somebody's going to be in this thing late in the season at 7-9, and still sitting there near the 7 seed. But the reality is that doesn't matter either, because they're not a threat to do anything, even if they were to, in by the skin of their teeth.
So, let's talk about the matchup today. How do you feel about it? Obviously, there's the thing I think Craig and I are kind of on the fence about is there's this emotional unrest around the team. But they match up really well with Philly, and they play them really well. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah. Is Jordan Davis going to play, by the way? Is there any information on that?
I have not seen anything yet this morning. I'll have to take a closer look at the Philly people, but haven't seen anything yet.
Because I would love to see the ability offensively to not be stuck in behind the chains consistently with, sacks. And you can't get sacked when you run the football. I'm pretty sure that can't happen when you hand the ball off. If that play cannot end in a sack. But Philly's so impossible to run the football against, especially if that mountain of a man is in the game. But, it's interesting. Washington's the one team that had just minimal success running the football in that first game. They had a couple of good runs in the first half. And then, Robinson Jr. ran it in from the 23-yard line on two consecutive plays. But the matchup, to me, in the first game, I think we saw some of this last year on Monday night, is I just don't think they run as well as sort of their brand would suggest in the secondary with, Slay and Bradbury.
Yeah.
And I think that there's the ability to attack them in space, but in the quick game and in the sprint out game and just steer clear of this drop back, it really doesn't even matter whose fault it is anymore. It just isn't super productive for them when they drop them back.
All right, that time of the week, Kevin, we need picks, we need non-Commanders picks, and then we need a Commanders picks. Who do you like outside of the Philly-Washington game today?
Okay. I like the Broncos and the Rams today. I like the Rams +7. I like the Broncos +7 against KC. Kind of like the Giants a little bit, too. I actually think that they're a team that is much better than their record suggests. If they start to get healthy, Washington gets them at home in a few weeks. That'll be a tough game again. So those would be the three.
Gotcha. I'm guessing the snowstorm in Kansas City influencing that pick a little bit?
No, I liked them all along, but I think the snow is actually going to be over by the time the game starts. But it's going to be cold.
And then
Here's your Denver forecast.
Yeah, here you go. Weather done. Sports back to them. Who you got? Washington, Philly.
I don't know. I thought all week it was a close game. Philly, the draining Sunday night win. I don't think there's been a lot of talk about this week. Maybe you guys have been talking about it. I don't think Jalen Hurts looks 100%. He just doesn't look as quick. I'd love to see some pressure put on him. I actually think Washington's got a chance today to keep it close. So something like 22-17, Philadelphia.
It feels like every week that is the range that we're all in. It's just like
I know.
Which I don't know what to make of it because it feels like that's not kind of Washington speed, but it is what we think is going to happen every single week. And Hurts has been dealing with a foot injury, so we'll see how that plagues him today. All right, Kevin Sheen, have more on this game tomorrow starting at 10 a.m. on the Team 980. Also, make sure to check the Kevin Sheen Show podcast. Sheen, thank you, sir, and we will talk to you next week.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right, talk to you soon. Bye.
All right, with Logan Paulsen, I'm Craig Hoffman here on the Take Command pregame show. When we get back, we typically go into our Coach Speak segment, and I want to kind of double-click on something Kevin said there about what comes out in the press around trade deadline time and the impact that can or does have on the team itself. So we'll hit that next. You'll hear from the Junkies at 11, dive deeper into the tape at 11:15. It's the Take Command pregame show here on a Burgundy and Gold game day.
We have a new submission to the Real Things Hall of Fame. The F-35 is a fighter jet that the military has. It is very expensive. Very expensive. The F-35 program costs the U.S. government / the military over $1 trillion. Like, this is one of the most expensive things in the U.S. government's budget is the program that makes these planes. Each one is incredibly valuable and expensive. And something happened during a training mission, but this jet leaves, they go on a training mission, and it's in stealth mode, apparently, and the pilot has to eject. So the pilot's like, I'm up out of here. Pilot lands relatively safely, has, I think, an injury or two that has to be tended to, but, like, is alive. But then they lost the jet. So the jet disappeared from the radar. The U.S. government's like, well, we don't know where the jet is. And so the Buford, which is the suburb not suburb, it's in South Carolina. It's by Charleston. Close enough. If people are actually from there and don't want to say that and want to say it's by Hilton Head, I know I grew up in the state. Leave my geography alone for the sake of the story, which I've now made less efficient by telling you all of those things because I can't help myself. Talk about a plane crash. Hey, we're back. So the F-35 gets essentially lost, and they're like, I don't know where this very expensive warplane went. And lo and behold, sometime the next day or later that day, it crashes somewhere, and luckily no one's hurt. But this $100 million plane is gone. Whoopsies, we crashed the plane. And this is an eyewitness account from a Charleston area television station of someone who heard the crash.
In the bathroom taking a shave, and I heard a screeching, saw that between a screech and a whistle. I said, what in the world is this? And I heard a boom. Then my whole house shook.
White says he didn't realize it was a plane at the time, so he didn't call anybody.
The first thought came to me, I said, what's a meteorite coming out of space or something? And I said, well, if the airplane, it needed to be reported. Let the thing be flying just too low.
The F-35B airplane wreckage created an extensive debris field.
That voice, we gotta get a drop for the voice because it might be better than Steph Curry's.
I was gonna say, I feel like we have to do a comparison. Can I pull this off with? Yeah, okay. So I had to compare or see if I had enough channels on the board to do this. But we got Steph Curry here. We got Charlie Brown here. And we got our mans here.
His is better, though.
I think his is the best one. His is definitely, it's not quite Charlie Brown. It's definitely close to Steph Curry, though.
Yes.
We'll see you tomorrow.
You'll hear from the Sports Junkies coming up in about 12 minutes here on the Team 980 and 106.7 The Fan. It's a Burgundy and Gold game day, the Take Command pregame show alongside Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman. We are live at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. Staff starting to come alive a little bit, Logan. They're ready to go. They're fired up. Doors open here in about 10 minutes at 11 o'clock. All right, so this is our Coach Speak segment. Typically, we take something that Ron Rivera or Eric Bieniemy or whoever says during the week, and we try to translate it from Coach Speak into something real. But I think, one, this week it was interesting. Bieniemy typically gives like 2-minute answers and says nothing. Much shorter this week.
Much shorter even than that.
Yeah, he was. There's a bunch of 14, 15-second bites from Eric Bieniemy this week.
Wow.
I was like, whoa, I can't just hit a bite and then take a nap in the middle of the show. We gotta pay attention here. I don't take a nap in the middle of my radio show.
You might.
Especially to my boss. But I think the most interesting thing that kind of comes out this week is some of the stuff that, Ron says at the podium, but really what's kind of coming out behind the scenes about the trade deadline with Montez Sweat, with Chase Young, the fact that we know so much information. And to be very clear, I'm going to dive into how some of this works real quick and then get your kind of take on it from the player side of it, from the analyst side of it. But as someone who was a reporter, it could be a front office person giving you that. It could be a coach, but it also could be an agent.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say
a lot of sources around reporting, and I have no idea who Nikki and John and Ben or who their specific sources are on this story or any story. But it could, a lot of people say, how does this get out? How could Ron let this happen? Like he's got control over everyone. But good process is if you're working on something, you want to keep the agent in the loop. You don't want to surprise the agent because your agent relationships are very, very, very important. Mm-hmm. And so if all of a sudden the agent then goes to the reporter and is like, yeah, we got an offer for our guy, we'll see what the team does. The reporter reports it, and it gets out, and now all of a sudden the team's got to answer questions about it. The players got to answer questions about it. And it's not like nobody failed in doing their job.
Right.
Just the reporter did a good job of developing a relationship with the agent over time, and that's ultimately our job. So with all that said, as this stuff leaks out, however it's getting out, how does that reflect back onto the team, back onto Montez, Chase, Antonio Gibson, Jacoby Brissett, anyone else whose name might or might not come up this week?
Well, I think there's probably more. What I would assume is there's probably more people in the trade rumor from fans as opposed to people who are actually getting traded. We mentioned John Keim on this podcast a lot. That guy has been around for 30 years, and the three names that come up consistently with him are Chase, Montez, and Antonio Gibson.
Yeah.
And I think those are if John says that, those are the people I'm going to focus on. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the level of credibility that he's earned in this market because he does his due diligence. He has great relationships with people in the building, agents, everybody, right? And so those are the three. So I think all those other ones are probably a little fanny kind of.
Well, to be clear on Brissett, there's a lot of easy, low-hanging fruit that's motivated from the Cleveland side of things.
100%.
With Watson's shoulder continuing to be a problem, they could bring Brissett in and start him immediately because he knows the system, because he's been there. So a lot of that started. Mary Kay Cabot, who's kind of the John Keim of Cleveland, she's been on that beat forever, wrote a piece last week saying, hey, the Browns would do really well to go steal Jacoby Brissett back from the Commanders. Right. And then she had a report a couple of days later that they weren't going to do that.
Right.
So
I think that's where
a lot of that started on the Cleveland side of things, but John has made it very clear that they want to keep Jacoby here
which
as
makes
insurance
sense.
and to continue to help Sam.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. You're not going to trade a piece that, again, is a good mentor piece, a guy that's going to help you win games, especially when the quarterback's getting sacked a ton. He's going to get hurt at some point this year. That's just, if
it keeps up, that is
continues.
100% going to
that's 100% going to happen. But I think you need a good backup in the NFL if you want to win games, and I don't think they have anybody even serviceable. So anyway, but I do think that it's my agent, for example, he goes to the combine and I'll meet him there, and he knows everybody from every team. And so if you need any gossip, on any team, I'll talk to my agent, and he somehow knows stuff about stuff that you're like, how you don't even know this person. He's like, oh no, I got this person that does. And so those relationships are so important. And that's where that kind of web of information stems from. And I think, like you said, it's good process to tell the agent because that agent has other clients, other people that you want to bring in the organization. If you sour that, I've had things that I've seen this with my agent and other agents that I know really well, is they've had a bad interaction with a team, a GM, and then they have other people that they are actively telling not to go to a certain location for the rest of their career representing that person. And I think so that maintaining that relationship with the agent is really, really important. And if the agent does tell a reporter, like, that's part of the cost of doing business, I think.
Yep.
So there's nothing bad about that. It is surprising how prevalent it seems, but I also will say, like, the beat here, Nikki, John, Sam Fortier, they do a great job of having those relationships and finding that information. Like that, I will say, I played for multiple different teams. The beat here is excellent at kind of pulling on threads and finding stuff like that. So I think that's another thing to kind of keep in mind. Like, you got people who are really good at their jobs who are good at finding information. So
yeah, I mean, if this is a prime place to work as a media member.
Yeah.
It's a goal type of destination for those of us that make this our careers. So yeah, you're gonna get really high level
Good
people here,
yeah.
For sure, and they tend to stay for a long time, which helps build relationships, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody stayed as long as Kime. I guess Rick Snyder's also stayed as long as Kime.
I don't know, Rick. What's he do?
Yeah, he works for us, actually.
Oh, all right.
Doing some writing for thefandc.com, et cetera. He's
all right, well,
been around.
Have to meet Rick
Yeah.
at some point.
So anyway, the point is, people know stuff, and this happens. But it does mean that, like, Montez has to answer questions this week. And the other thing that I would say, too, is I think sometimes we think that players think about what they're going to say a lot more than they actually do.
Yeah.
Like Montez this week spoke in the past tense about his time here, where he's like, it's been a great run here. And everyone's like, oh, my God, that sounds like a guy that's going to get traded or knows he's going to get traded. And he might ultimately get traded. But at the end of the day, like, Montez is going to, like, he's coming off of practice. He's going to go, I'm tired. What do you guys got? Yeah, hey, if I get traded, it's been a great time here.
Yeah.
And he's not thinking about how that's going to get interpreted and twisted 1,000 different ways on Twitter. So I would just say, like, don't put too much stock into that stuff, what players say, especially in a scrum after practice in the middle of a super intense and important game week.
Yeah, and again, like, I don't know this for sure, but I'm sure if what Kime says is true about him getting the most kind of concrete offer, I'm sure his agent has talked to him. I'm sure that's on his mind. Like, I don't know that for sure, but I would just assume that he's got a good agent. The agent is doing his due diligence. He's doing the things he needs to do. And so that's another reason why this game is so weird to me, because you've got all these people, Montez specifically, who've got all this kind of looming over them. Like, I would imagine it's very challenging to play a good football game. I made the fourth preseason game comparison, like when you know you're going to get cut or when there's the potential you're going to get cut. And you don't play your best because there's a little bit of fear involved. There's a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of rumination. And that's just not conducive to playing good football. So it'd be really interesting to see what he does today. And, I hope that this is not a super stressful time for him. I would imagine it is. But, yeah, man, this is a tough time. And I know Kevin said it doesn't feel the same as some of these other, really terrible years because Dan's not here anymore. But as a player, I would imagine this feels pretty terrible. Like they don't really think about it in the same way as, like, oh, Dan's not here. Oh, the future's looking great. Like, as a player, when I played, it was almost like one day at a time. And so you're just looking at what's right in front of you. And here's all this adversity in the locker room, about guys getting traded, guys being unhappy. And that's just a tough spot to be in. So it'll be really curious to see what they do today and how well they can perform.
All right, that's Logan Paulsen. I'm Craig Hoffman. We get back, you'll hear from the Sports Junkies. Also still to come this hour, a deeper dive, again, into some of the pressures that Sam Howell is taking and how they can fix that today. We will also go around the NFL and get you the inactive list coming up at 11:30. We're monitoring Jordan Davis's status for the Eagles, amongst others. So we'll get you that coming up at 11:30. It's the Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day, 106.7 The Fan, and the team, 980.
Was it Cincinnati?
That's depends on the story, but maybe we were playing Cincinnati.
So Logan catches this touchdown.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was Cincinnati. Yep.
It was Cincinnati. So we put in this play, and it was like, I think we called it Hoss Juke or something like that. I can't remember what we called it in that offense, but Logan's on a seam, right? So he's our vertical threat, taking the top off the defense.
Digging out, guys.
We're talking in the week. I don't think we ever said it in the install with those guys, but they're like, listen, Logan's not even in the progression. He's taking the top off this thing. We're trying to work this little option route down. And they bust this coverage. And I mean, he is screaming wide open.
I wasn't even supposed to be on the play. They were supposed to sub somebody else in
because I thought I was too slow to run this route. Just for the context here for everybody.
So he's screaming wide open. And I'm like, Matt, throw it at his back shoulder. You might hit him in stride. If you try and back shoulder him. Threw it right at him. He catches it. It was an awesome touchdown. Just the celebration afterwards was so much fun. For me, it was always fun celebrating the touchdowns with the guys that didn't score them all the time. You know, like
take that, Julio Jones.
Yeah, and I'm not, I'm saying that, but like your role for us was you did the dirty work, and when you see guys that do the dirty work get rewarded for it, that was really cool. Something I'll never forget. The caveman, man. The caveman was in there in the end zone celebrating. It was awesome.
So there was this play where we call it like it was, what is it, 19 Zorro. So basically like versus a 3-4 structure with an outside linebacker who is Von Miller in this case, I would get help from the fullback, like on inside help. So I could be really aggressive on my reach, really violent to the reach. And so it's me and DY, is a physical son of a gun. And so we take Von Miller and we put him, like, no joke, in the water cooler. Like, we put him way out there on the sideline. And we were like, this guy ain't nothing. Like, we're going to, we were so fired up. And so it ended up being like a 25 or 30-yard gain. So we were all fired up. And then Kyle's like, all right, let's come back to it. So like 2 plays later, we're running again, and we're running to the right. And I was like, oh, man, we are about to tee this dude up real quick. Just tune him up nice and good. And so I go out to get him, and I'm firing off the ball. My hat's low. I'm flat back. And I swear to God, like he was about as close as my hand was to my face. And he just disappeared into like mist. And he like swung me, and I fell right on my face. And I just was like, oh my gosh. And like I went back and watched the film, and it was crazy how quickly he was able to like do his little basketball weave and then like just disappear from my vision and get inside and make the tackle. And I was like, oh, so now he's upset. So then the next play, I'm like all tentative and nervous. And I felt like Vaughn did. I watched this on film, so I knew he did this. But he does a really good job of like kind of like playing it like a boxer a little bit. You know what I mean? Like kind of rope-a-doping you a little bit. So like he lets you get one, right? Where I got after him. He makes you look like an idiot. And then the next time I was super tentative on him, and he literally did like a double stick like he was going to make me miss, and then just grabbed my neck and then threw me over the pile. I was like, man, this is going to be tough. I got to like think of a plan here in the next 15 minutes so I don't look like an idiot for the rest of the game. But, when you're playing elite football players like him, like there's a reason they're elite. So if you get one on them, it's probably because they want. They probably because they're letting you get one.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. It's a trap.
Take Command pregame show on a burgundy and gold game day. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen with you. And the Sports Junkies are on both the Fan and the Team 980 every weekday morning, 6 to 10 a.m. for years in this spot. They did their own pregame show. They've been nice enough to give us more time, Logan. But we always want to get their thoughts in the show. So without further ado, JP and company, take it away.
All right, boys. Commanders against the Eagles as the
You're up.
A very disappointing loss to the New York Giants, 14-7, a game in which Sam Howell was sacked another 6 times. Did they figure it out against this tough defensive line that the Eagles have?
Not only tough defensive line, a team that's going to come in and probably put up 28 to 30 points. That's generally what the Eagles do outside of their weird game when they lost to the Jets. They score between 25 and 30 points. So can you keep up with them points-wise? And, yeah, I think the big question is, can the offensive line protect Sam Howell? Can they improve in a week? Are there different schemes? Is there going to be different personnel out there protecting Sam Howell to keep the pass rush off him?
And I feel like when they played Philly in Philly and they lost 34-31. I feel like for whatever reason, outside of the Buffalo game where they were just terrible and everything went wrong, but they were just playing much better as an offense because they scored a bunch in Denver, mostly in the second half, but they scored some. And then they scored 31 against the Eagles. But now, since then, Bears killed them. Giants, that was just abysmal. And I just think that...
And they weren't impressive in their win against Atlanta.
So I just think that maybe the confidence as a whole is really down. The offense is certainly down. And allowing so many sacks each week is just going to take its toll. And this is the one team you don't want to play when you're allowing a bunch of sacks.
I'm not really super aware of how aware the staff has been of the sack issue. Remember, a few weeks ago, Bieniemy didn't even know the number at that time, which was like 19.
I think he was just in denial.
Okay, now they know.
Yes.
Okay, and it's obviously a thing. They're being asked about it every week. I fully expect to see the best game plan yet from Bieniemy in the offense, and that means quicker passes, boom in the pocket, play action, obviously some delayed handoffs, screen passes, all of that stuff, and, running the ball. And I expect them to put up another good fight against the Eagles.
I'm with Cakes. They're going to need to put up a lot of points because that Eagles team is loaded. Obviously, they went to the Super Bowl last year. We dubbed it a moral victory when they played them the first time. I think it's going to be really tough. I just watched a video of Micah Parsons talking about the Eagles, and he's talking about how they just have so much talent on the defensive side, from Jalen Carter, who they draft this year, to Reddick, Sweat. He talks about the corners,
We
Slay.
know their talent.
He goes through all that talent. Well, I feel like talent, sometimes you can beat it, but over the course of time, the talent is going to be too much and probably overwhelming. And watching how the Commanders have played and watching what the Giants did to them, wouldn't you expect more and more? The blueprint is out there. Blitz. Come after Sam Howell. You're going to get sacks.
You
may force turnovers.
If they game plan correctly and they execute just for a couple seconds, you can defeat these blitzes.
We keep waiting for that. We keep waiting for it, and it's just jot it down. The Giants were the worst. They had 5 sacks going in 6 games, and they got to them 5 times and a half.
Poor coaching and poor execution.
Now you're going up against a more talented team, and I understand it was a close game the first time, but I probably look at that as an outlier. I think the Eagles are probably going to dominate them.
Was it an outlier when we beat them?
Whole different season.
Basically the same person.
Whole different season.
This is an Eagles team that averages about 5.5, maybe 6 sacks per game. Facing the Commanders, I'm just going to add like 2, maybe 2.5 to that number. Like, I fully expect the Eagles come in and dominate in the trenches and rack up 7 or 8 sacks against Sam Howell. And that's not hyperbole. That's what's happening to Sam Howell every week.
And then offensively, A.J. Brown has killed them. Who knows about Manny Forbes? I mean, he's not going to be covering A.J. Brown, but Forbes
it's hard to cover people when you're on
not
the
playing.
sideline.
Right.
Yeah.
But, offensively, even though the media is saying that the Eagles are playing like a C+, maybe a B- type of game, that's going to be good enough. They're still averaging 27 a game and not playing at the top of their level. So I think that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to win this game convincingly.
Commanders defense going in.
30 seconds.
Yardage, 29th in points per game. I'll give the first score amongst us. I think it's going to be a bloodbath. 34-13 Eagles.
Ooh,
I'm going to go 29-16, and yes, Sam Howell will be sacked more than 5 times.
I like the Eagles to win, but I think the Commanders cover and keep it close. 28-21, Eagles win at FedEx.
You stole my thunder, Cakes. I like the Commanders to cover. Pick a score, 27-24.
That's our take. Back to you, boys.
All right, JP, thank you. So, predictions of doom and gloom from the sports junkies, Logan. But I'm more interested in the process stuff they talked about. Do the Eagles just crank it up this week? Do they say Sam Howell and this offensive line seem to really be struggling identifying blitzes? It's pretty easy game plan. If we heat them up, we're going to win.
I mean, I would. I think the thing is, everyone thinks, they got to heat them up. They got to run 50% pressure. Even if they go from, I think they're like 27%, even if they go to 27 to 35, like that's enough to make an impact on this game, the way that the Commanders have been dealing with protections. So I think that's one thing just to kind of keep an eye on is the pressure rate, and why not? Why not? They had a really hard time against the Giants. The offense was almost untenable. They've made changes on the offensive line. They've got new pieces in there. The Commanders have. I'm the DC. I'm like, it doesn't need to be crazy. Let's just bring enough to kind of make people go, oh, no. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what you're going to get today. And then in terms of what they're going to do offensively, I think this game is such an interesting game because one of the things I loved about the first game is that the Commanders offensively were so efficient on third down. I think they were like 59%, which is great. Can they do that again this week? Because we see when this offense is not efficient on third down, when they don't possess the football, when they don't find those 15 to 20-yard explosive plays, what happens? And if they don't get that same result this week, can the defense keep them in the game? And I am a little bit more optimistic about the defense coming off the Giants game than I think a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think they kind of found something. They found a little bit of their identity, something that allows them to be comfortable. There weren't a lot of coverage busts. Now that offense is different than anything they've faced, the Giants offense, I'm saying, but I think it gives you a little bit more confidence that the defense is going to be able to keep the game a little bit closer. Now it comes down, in my opinion, to can the offense kind of get their legs back under them after getting hit in the teeth, find what they do well, maintain that efficiency, run the football with a little bit more regularity and a little bit more efficiency. It really and that to me is the key. Is has the defense found who they are, and can the offense kind of reestablish what they did against Philly in the first game?
Yeah, I mean, I think defensively, we've talked about they've gone to actually a little bit more cover two.
Yep.
They've found some structures that work for them. Of course, they find that, and then now they're going to be without Cody Barton today.
Yeah, which I think is a big deal.
Yeah, which I said on Twitter, and then the replies are why I deleted Twitter off my phone because people formed an opinion on Cody Barton earlier in this season. And, yeah, he was not very good.
Yeah.
We very much said as much earlier in the season. But the last 5 quarters he played, the Atlanta game and then the first quarter against New York, were probably the 5 best quarters he played all season. And I think people underestimate the time it can take or the ability for players to adjust within a season. Like, he was learning how to play behind this defensive line that does a lot of freelancing because they're good at it and they make plays. Like, you want them to do that, but it's a hard adjustment for a linebacker behind them. And he finally kind of figured it out. Now he goes down. He's on IR. He's out for at least 4 weeks here. So, like, I don't know what they do at that spot. They did call up Jabril Cox off the practice squad. Does he have a role? Do they just play David Mayo? It sounds like Jamin Davis will have the green dot. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to play Mike linebacker, but he could, and you could play Kalik at the will. Like, I think it's going to be very interesting today to see how they mix and match that second level because, like, the good news is they have options. The bad news is I don't know that any of the options are anything as good as, and I know people are going to be like, this is the dumbest thing you've ever said, Craig, but, like, as good as Cody Barton because, 1, Barton's better than people think, and 2, these other options are not ideal.
Yeah, and I think you sleep on, like, there's things that players do on the field and there's players that do things that players do, like, between the ears in the classroom. And I think Cody was playing better physically on the field. You know, is he perfect? No, but there are very few perfect players in the NFL. But I do think, like, to your point, he was playing better week on week. And I think the thing that he does for them is between the ears, you can tell he does a lot in terms of getting guys lined up, getting the checks out. And that's one thing that the staff has been kind of openly critical of Jamin and why he's not been the Mike linebacker is the between the ears stuff, getting the checks out, getting the right formations versus motion. What are they doing? I do think that might be okay this week because the Eagles are kind of like, hey, man, we're better than you. So we're just going to line up and run it. Run it. So I think that will let them play a little bit faster defensively. But I do think there is a lot. Anytime your Mike linebacker goes down, even if they're not a great football player, there's a reason they're the Mike linebacker. It's because of the cerebral element, the leadership element, and I do think Cody brings a lot of that. And I think, to your point, he was playing better, but I think it's the other stuff that they're really going to miss because Jamin, while showing an ability to do that, is not as effective without Cody in the game, I don't think. And then you got to put it another person. Is it Kalik? Is it Jabril Cox? Who is it? I don't know, but they haven't been playing a lot this year, and for reasons, because they're not as effective as the two guys that are starting at the moment. So I do think that's going to be very, very telling in terms of what they're doing today, how they're playing, who plays, and it's anytime you lose the middle linebacker, it's going to be tough. And so in this situation, it's just about how can you kind of mitigate some of that damage, and it's probably going to be a little bit of a committee in terms of replacing what he does, and hopefully a guy like Jamin's ready for the challenge.
Because Jamin is playing really good football at the will.
Right.
It's a different position in this defense.
No doubt. All right, we'll talk about more of that at the top of the hour. But next, let's dive a little bit deeper into, again, this feels like what we do every week in this segment, but some of the pressure, some of the sacks that Sam gave up last week. And is there a way that Eric Bieniemy and maybe Tyler Larson coming in at center can help mitigate some of them this week against a very good Eagles front? That's next in Tail of the Tape here on the Take Command pregame show. Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen with you on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. It's time, Logan, for the tale of the tape. We spent all week watching the film, breaking it down. What can it teach us about how the Commanders prepare for this week? And yet again, we're going to look at Sam Howell being tackled with
Oh, my
football.
goodness gracious. Every week.
I'll tell you this. I would love to do a segment that is not Sam Howell sacks, Sam Howell pressures, because that would mean they fixed it.
Yeah.
But the problem is, currently the Commanders are playing whack-a-mole on the pressure.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing every week. A lot of this,
So
I think,
let me just cut you off there. So for a long time, it was kind of the same thing. It was like it was the offensive line was playing okay, and they were kind of doing a good job creating nice, solid pockets. Occasionally there were some quick losses, but they were going generally to the right people. And then Sam was turning some of those pressures into sacks at a kind of an unprecedented rate. You get to the Giants game, and then that is where you kind of see this total malfunction of the protection system from all positions. It wasn't just the quarterback. It wasn't just the offensive line. It's the running backs. Everybody involved in the protection service had an issue. And I think if you just go through the sacks, it becomes very clear. The first sack of the game was given up by Sadiq Charles on a TT, like a stunt inside. And it's a four-man rush. This is the second sack.
they're hard. It's hard. There's many of them. They're hard to keep track of.
Dexter Lawrence had a sack earlier on Gates, which again is a one-on-one loss. You can tell that they were kind of like, hey man, he's the best player on their defense. Let's make sure we're taking care of that guy with our slide. Sadiq is over-aggressive on the slide, and Leonard Williams loops around and is unblocked for a sack. And so could Sam potentially have gotten the ball out a little bit quicker? Maybe. In both instances. Could he potentially have done that? Yes, but I just look at the offensive line, and you can't lose one-on-ones like that, and you can't have a mental mistake like that to kind of start the game off. And that's like the simplest version of the sacks.
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to look at, right?
Yeah.
I think where you put blame depends on when you start looking. And this was kind of solidified for me this week. And a guy I mentioned earlier, this Honest NFL guy on Twitter who is very, very locked into this offense, used to work for Andy Reid at some point in the Philadelphia past. And he talks about how on one play in particular that, it looks like it's a quick loss. It's a bad job by the offensive line, but Sam has, if he takes a 3-step drop and realizes, hey, this is against pressure, this is built into the offense, it's a 3-step drop, not a 5-step drop, he doesn't get hit when his 5th step hits that back of the drop because the ball would have been out 2 steps ago. But also, the receiver doesn't get his head around quick enough for that quick, early shallow cross throw. So that's part of it. There's another one where it's like, hey, against this look, this is a bad play call. Have they empowered Sam to, well, one, situationally, was that a good call initially by Bieniemy? 2, when Sam sees that at the line, is he empowered to get out of that?
Yeah.
3, once you say set hut, could a receiver have won faster or Sam thrown / looked somewhere else because it's man-to-man coverage, it's pick your matchup? Could he have thrown and avoided the pressure that way? So on that one in particular, literally from play call to potential pre-snap adjustment to better protection by the O-line to a quarterback making a different decision to a receiver winning quicker, if any one of those things happens, then you get a win on the play, or at the very least, not a sack level loss on the play, and instead you get a sack level loss because Sam Howell and company take that sack. And when I say and company, again, it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, 100%. I think that, this is one of the challenging things about doing analyst work for the team is you don't really know what's in. As much as we are around the team, when we talk to people on the team, you don't know what Sam has the ability to do, even with the protections. There are things where it's like, the center's calling the protection, and then there's a comment in a presser where it's like, we were really happy with how Sam adjusted protections in the second half. And it's like, well, I didn't think he was doing that. I didn't think that was within his purview.
One thing that John said this week is that he thinks they may have given him a little bit more freedom in the second half to do some of that stuff.
Which I think is the right thing to do.
Which also might explain why Nick Gates got benched because, hey, man, if we brought you in as a veteran center to help this young quarterback and you're not getting the protections where we want it, let's get Tyler Larson, who started 93 career games at center, in there to help him out.
Yeah, and I think, there was that one sack where they're in I think it's a 7-man pro.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of guys staying in protection, tight end and running back are staying in. And the slide is working away from the known rusher. And to me, that's one that should have easily been picked up, right? You just say, hey, guys, no, we're not sliding left. We're going to slide to the right. We're going to pick this up. And that's something that a more experienced quarterback can take care of. And that's something probably that one of the reasons why you empower Sam to do that a little bit more. Because I always find that it's tough to have centers call protections all the time. I think they're very smart guys usually, and they do a great job of calling the protections, but they can't see everything the way a quarterback can see it. So giving the quarterback a little bit more leeway there is awesome. So to your point, there's layers to this. There's IDing it correctly. There's the physical execution. There's the adjustments. The one that I'm pretty confident in identifying was the 3rd and 6 to Bates, where they're in empty. They do the squeeze protection. Bates and Sam don't seem like they're quite synced up in terms of identifying the pressure. And when you're in empty and when you're doing some of these more kind of spread out passes, you got to be aware of that. I had a play when I was with Kirk where we were in empty and I had a flat return, and versus pressure I was supposed to just run a flat. But in the moment, I just forgot and just ran a flat return. And Kirk did a great job of losing a little ground, putting the ball with some air on it, so I was able to catch it. But I screwed the quarterback there, And I think that happened. And if there had been a less experienced quarterback back there, does he lose ground the right way? Does he kind of shift in the pocket? Does he put air on that ball to give me an opportunity to catch it? Probably not. So I think you're seeing kind of an amalgamation of things leading to sacks. And I think one of the things about Wink Martindale's defense, like we talked about last week, was that it was going to show you and going to present a lot of these issues in terms of timing, in terms of numbers, in terms of identification. So I do think that game, for whatever reason, if it gives fans any comfort, is going to be slightly an outlier compared to other teams are going to play this year. But it's still things that they need to get corrected and still need to get addressed. And I also think it's important to just say this, is that when you're in a new offense with new protection schemes, this stuff, while they've talked about it, I'm sure, isn't quite second nature yet. So it's not quite as sharp as it could be. And that's, in addition to all of the things you mentioned, in addition to things I mentioned, is another huge factor when it comes to pressure pickup specifically.
Yeah, so a lot there. Obviously, you can see how complicated this stuff is. And as we said earlier in the show, the good news is there's a plethora of things that could get better. The problem is there's so many different things that could get better. Hopefully that gets cleaned up today against a very good Eagles front. And one thing that I'll mention, too, that we might have time to dive back into a little bit later, a lot of the losses or a lot of the pressures this season have been when they have good enough numbers to protect.
Yeah.
It's assigning the resources properly that has been an issue. We'll see if they can get that corrected as they continue forward this season and how much the Eagles test and stress that today. With Logan, I'm Craig. This is the Take Command pregame show live at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. Will Jordan Davis be there for the Eagles today? We should have that answer when we get back, and actives due at 11:30 a.m. So we'll get you those, get the full injury report, and then we will go around the NFL next. It is the Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day, 106.7 The Fan, the Team 980, and streaming live on YouTube. Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. Logan Paulsen there, Craig Hoffman here. To take you around the NFL in just a moment. But, Logan, let's see if we can find the inactives real quick. Of course, the big one we're looking for, there we go, is Jordan Davis, and he is active today for the Eagles. So inactives for Philadelphia are Tanner McKee, who's their designated third quarterback, running back Rashad Penny, cornerback Bradley Roby, Patrick Johnson, a linebacker, and then Moro Ojomo. And then one of their backup tight ends is also inactive. So Jordan Davis active today for Philly, despite being hurt in the game or in their practice on Thursday. And then for the Commanders today, the inactives are Christian Holmes, Andre Jones Jr., which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Phil Mathis active, so that adjusts their special teams a little bit. KJ Henry, Trent Scott, Curtis Hodges, Cole Turner. Oh, so that's interesting. Alex Arma is up this week. And Mitchell Tinsley at the wide receiver. So Curtis Samuel active today. They bring up Alex Arma off the practice squad, which is something we should definitely talk about later, how the fullback can impact the run game. But I guess these 2 and 3 tight end sets, not so much. And that's where we are.
That's really interesting, actually.
For the Commanders. So let's circle back to that closer to the top of the hour. Let's go ahead, though, and go around the league, get some thoughts on the rest of the day's games. Rams and Cowboys gets us started. That's a 1 o'clock game in Dallas today. Rams are 7-point dogs at Dallas. I think that the Rams can keep this one close. First game for Sean McVay as a dad. Congrats to Sean and Veronica.
To Sean. Yeah, that's awesome.
But it's everyone seems to think Dallas is going to kind of just get it back going after their bye week, pick up with the high-powered offense.
Yeah, I think the thing that will be interesting to watch is, does Dak run the ball a little bit more? It seemed to add a little bit of offense efficiency for them, and then that defense for for Dallas has been awesome. They've just been really, really physical and varied. And what does Sean McVay have in store for them? Obviously, I think Matthew Stafford's playing really high-level football. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, those guys are doing a great job. And so, where does that kind of lie? I probably think this is the Cowboys all day. But, again, the Rams in terms of and I think part of it because the Rams have not been scoring despite their very efficient offensive production.
Yeah, they got to figure out how to punch it in the end zone. Vikings and Packers, and all of a sudden, Logan, if the Minnesota Vikings beat a 2-4 Packers team today, they are back at 500 on the year with Justin Jefferson slowly but surely mending. They are 1-point favorites at Lambeau.
Yeah, I would probably take the Vikings there. I just think they're playing good football. Kirk's doing a great job. Obviously, Addison, the receiver they drafted in the first round, has been, I don't want to say a gem because he's the first-round pick. You expect him to do that, but they found kind of a way to offset some of Justin Jefferson's production. That offensive line's playing better. Their right and left tackles are some of the highest graded players on PFF in terms of offensive line play. So a lot of good stuff there, and I just think Green Bay is a little bit, lost at the moment. So
it's weird because Love looked so good earlier in the year, and then it just hasn't really worked. Can they get it together with Aaron Jones back fresh another week? Obviously last week was his first week back. Falcons and Titans, this is a Logan Paulsen only game. Let's just run the ball 30 times each and then call it a day, see who's got more points at the end. For the rest of us, this is probably the ugliest game on the schedule.
Anytime the Falcons play, I'm excited to watch them. I think they've got so many unique playmakers. Pitts, London, obviously the running back, what's his name? Goodness gracious. Bijan is doing a great job. And, where's Desmond Ridder at in his development? Is that offensive line going to continue to progress? Defensively, they're doing a great job. I think they walk away with this. I think they're a better football team. But the Titans, for whatever reason, get scrappy in certain situations. And obviously, they still have Derrick Henry, and they have some playmakers offensively. That is going to be really interesting because Will Levis is probably going to get his first start in conjunction with
Malik Willis.
As well. So that's going to be, what does that actually look like in terms of quarterback rotation? And can they find something that Malik Willis is good at? I really have been surprised with that offense. I thought they'd kind of lean more into the Malik Willis zone read, making him make plays, but they have not done that at all. So
no, they haven't done much of anything this year. It's kind of the problem. They've apparently told Derrick Henry, I think I saw this week, that they're not going to trade him, which is nuts to me. I don't know why you do that. He's in a contract year. I would trade him. I'd trade Tannehill.
Just get everybody out of there.
I mean, if the Jets want Tannehill, if Zach Wilson has a stinker, like, that'd be a good move for both sides.
Yeah, or even like Tannehill to like Atlanta, I think would be really interesting.
Yeah.
Like, imagine how much more proficient they'd be down there.
Oh my God! And he's already, got a relationship. He knows the offense.
Yep.
That'd be very smart. Saints and Colts. I have no idea what to do with the Indianapolis Colts. They scored 38 on the Browns last week, who have been the best defense in the league. But then they lost, and that's a team that their defense has been better than their offense for most of the year. Gardner Minshew, if he can just not turn it over.
Yeah.
Like, they're pretty good. I also have no idea what to do with the Saints.
I think Gardner Minshew leads the league in turnover-worthy plays, which is a lot considering he hasn't played that much. The Saints are baffling to me. So confusing. Defense is good. Offense has playmakers. Derek Carr just doesn't seem to be himself. So I think it'll be a low-scoring game, kind of a messy game. I'm going to give a slight edge to the Saints just because I think they're a better football team.
I think I picked the Colts when we picked that the other day.
Don't hate it.
Patriots and Dolphins. Patriots coming off the big win over the Bills. Did they figure something out? Are the Bills not that good now? Dolphins coming off the big loss to the Eagles.
Yeah.
Can they get back on track? They're 8.5-point favorites at home. I think they will.
I think the Dolphins at home are going to be tough to stop. There does seem to be a slight correlation with like even slightly weird weather games for them. Like if it's a little chilly, they can't run. Not going to be chilly in Miami, so I think
81 today in Miami.
They'll be doing all right. I will think Bill Belichick. The reason I'm excited for that game is I think Belichick will come up with something fun to do, to stop that offense. But I think they just got too much firepower at the moment. And interesting. Way less efficient without A-Chain in the lineup, so something to keep an eye on. A-Chain, is that how you say his name? No.
I do believe so. Also, I just saw the who's in and who's out alert come through, and there was, I think, a question about Raheem Mostert, and he is in. So listed as questionable. Looks like Raheem Mostert is in for today. So we should have official word on that shortly. Jets and Giants today. So we were wondering this week. Do the Jets have to use like the usual away locker room, or do they get to use their own locker room?
Do they? Yeah. What do they do for that? Or do they just get? I don't know what they would do.
Also, do they have to fight over parking?
Probably. I mean, someone probably parks in the away lot, right?
Oh, well, I mean, is there an away lot?
Yeah.
Normally normally you don't have a car at the game if you're an away team.
Point.
So I would think the Giants get the parking. I don't know how the Jets have to get to the game. And I would if I'm the Giants, I don't want the Jets to have their home locker room.
No, I don't want that either. But I know the practice facility's right there. Maybe they change in the practice facility and get shuttled over.
Maybe.
And get off the bus in their pads.
I mean, there's an away locker room in MetLife Stadium.
Like high school kids,
Yeah, that'd be pretty funny. Just it's Quinnen Williams getting off the bus with his pads.
Yeah, right.
But as for the game itself, Giants obviously look a lot better. They've also had a brutal schedule. That 2-5, you look through the 5 and you're like, oh, that makes sense. They lost to that team. Coming off the win over these guys last week, can they do it again against the Jets?
I think the Giants are going to win. I don't know why I think that. Honestly, I think they've kind of turned a corner. I think that defense is good. I think offensively with Tyrod Taylor, they're a little bit more dynamic. It'll be interesting because the Jets' defense is legit. So can they get it done? But I don't know. I think maybe the Jets have.
I kind of look at the Giants.
Or the Giants, excuse me.
And I look at what they did to Sam Howell and think they can do it to Zach Wilson.
That's what I think too. Yeah. I'm with that.
They can turn him inside out. I'll take the Giants in that one. Jags and Steelers. Jags have really found it of late. They've been one of the better teams in the league the last couple of weeks. 5-2. Steelers somehow are 4-2. Does anyone think the Steelers are good? No. Do they win more football games than they lose? Always.
Always, yeah. This is interesting because I think the Jaguars are good. Their roster's good. But for whatever reason, every time I watch them play, they do good stuff and then they do bad stuff that is not characteristic of a top team in the NFL. So I can't really quantify either one of those teams. I think the Jags are going to win. The Steelers are probably going to cover. I don't know. Like it's a 1-point spread, right, or 2-point spread, something like that. Yeah. So knowing Mike Tomlin, they probably win because he always wins close games like that. But I like the Jags. So.
And, of course, T.J. Watt will make the game-winning play at the end because T.J. Watt always makes the game-winning play at the end. Texans and Panthers, number 1 versus number 2 pick. Panthers letting Thomas Brown call the plays now. That switched during their bye week. So Frank Reich not calling it for Bryce Young anymore. Can that finally get them off the schneid versus a Texans team that everyone thought was going to be terrible, maybe win 2-3 games all year? They win today. They're already at 4. And they're above 500.
Kind of a sneaky good football team. Really good in pass protection. That offense, that Kyle Shanahan offense led by Bobby Slowick, who was the defensive quality control guy when I was here. He's now the OC, looking awesome. So I'm gonna go Texans all day.
If Slowick's one of those guys that if they continue to have a good year, like he's going to get head coaching interviews.
Dude, think about that tree, man. That tree is incredible. It's like anybody who's even remotely associated with it seems to be getting jobs, which is crazy.
And a lot of them have actually been pretty good.
No, yeah, I'm not saying that's not warranted. I'm
And,
just
and like it's different than the Belichick tree when it was like, get a job, never mind, get fired,
Yeah.
go back to New England.
Right.
Like it's like, oh, yep, okay, half the league now is from the Shanahan coaching tree.
Yep.
It's really nuts. Browns and Seahawks.
Sneaky good game, Coach.
Yeah, P.J. Walker starting for Cleveland again. Seattle starting to figure a few things out, it looks like, offensively, but pretty inconsistent. Both teams 4-2 coming into it.
How about Devon Witherspoon just balling his face off every single week, dude? He is an animal. I like the Browns, I guess, because the defense is good, and obviously they had a little bit of a hiccup last week, but I just think that Seattle offensive line has got a bunch of young football players that – are going to have a hard time blocking Myles Garrett. So I think that's going to be a huge deciding factor. I will say Seattle's probably going to run the ball a little bit more, where a guy like Tomlinson, the big offseason acquisition, comes in and maybe he's able to kind of gum up the middle there. But I think that's going to be a good football game, and I'm excited to watch that. So
I actually picked Seattle in this one. I feel like Geno's starting to find it again a little bit after a slower start to the year. I don't have as much faith in the Browns' defense. Like, there's got to be a regression to the mean at some point.
Yeah.
Like, they're good, but they're not the best of all time, which is what they were in the first, 6 weeks.
But they've done a good job of adding dynamic like Zadarius Smith, Tomlinson.
They're really good.
They've got some pieces there. So it's just going to be a tough sled, I think, for Seattle. But, you can win a game 21-14, and no one's going to care. So I agree with you.
Chiefs and Broncos, ton of snow already on the ground in Denver. Winter storm. Happy Halloween to the people of Colorado, I guess. Yikes, man. Chiefs favored by 7. The snow should not be active during the game, but
Chiefs.
Plenty of it on the ground.
Chiefs.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3 Chiefs. Okay, got it. Cool, good talk. Ravens and Cardinals. Baltimore favored by 10. Any reason to think that they will not run roughshod over Arizona, other than every time we do this, the underdog seems to come out and win?
Yeah, I mean, Arizona is a good plucky, is that a word
Yeah.
that people say? Plucky team. I like watching them play. They're well coached. They're not very talented, but they're playing above their skis. Good for them. The Ravens, however, last week just thumped the Detroit Lions, just thoroughly throttled them. And maybe they figured it out. And if they have figured it out, watch out, Arizona. You're going to be in the crosshairs of a pretty good football team.
Baltimore, definitely a team that could buy 1 or 2 pieces of the trade deadline and really turn things up in terms of their place in the AFC. Bengals all of a sudden back at 3-3, going on the road to San Francisco. Niners can't win a road game, can't lose at home. They're at home today.
Fighting Sam Darnold's.
No, Brock Purdy cleared the play.
Did he get cleared from Monday? He had a concussion on Monday, though, right?
Yeah, he did. He started to feel better in the middle of the week, was practicing by Thursday, and yesterday officially cleared Purdy to start today for San Francisco.
It's kind of a bummer. I mean, I'm happy for
Yeah,
him.
obviously great for Brock, but no, I agree. I kind of wanted to see Darnold and see what he looked like in this offense.
Yeah, me too. But the Bengals kind of look like a mess. They got high target load to Jamar Chase. What's going on with that? I have no idea. I think the 49ers.
He's always open.
Yeah.
He's got a 7-Eleven necklace, bro. That means that you're always open.
I'm with it. But I think the 49ers are the football team. I think they get right in this game.
Bears and Chargers. How sad is NBC?
Oh, that's a bummer.
Before the year, they're like, Fields going to figure it out.
And they might have figured it out. The Bears are playing better football than they were at the beginning of the year.
They couldn't play much worse.
And the Chargers, however, are the disappointing one, I think.
They are disappointing because their record is 2-4, but they have lost a ton of one-score, like the anti-2022 Vikings. All they've done is lose one-score games where they're really tight. They've actually played all right ball. Favored by 9 tonight, Tyson Bagent will get the start for Chicago's Fields.
They won last week, right?
Out. They did. So they're 2-5 on the year. Did not see this one as a battle of 2-win teams, but I look at it as an opportunity to go to bed early. That's where I'm at.
You're silly goose.
Because I'm old. Raiders and Lions, Monday Night Football. Can the Lions bounce back after, did the Ravens expose them last week, or did they just have a bad week?
That's a game that you made me think about. I should have gone back and watched that game. I really like the Lions. I like how they're built. I think that's a hiccup. I think the leadership of Campbell is going to be able to get them back on the right track. I think
And I don't think the Raiders are a bad football team. So I think that'll be kind of a sneaky good game, but I think the Lions win. It'll be close, though.
All right, when we get back here on the Take Command pregame show, we will take a look at some of the inactives because there's actually a lot of moving pieces. Commanders have also announced who their technical starters will be, so we'll give you the latest on that, what they'll do at linebacker, what they'll do on the O-line, and how that'll affect the game today. Coming up at noon, we'll take a look at the Philadelphia offense against this Washington defense. Our pick 6 at 12:15, Grant Paulsen at 12:30. And then it's time to make predictions and then go to the stadium. So that is how the rest of the show lines up here on the Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day.
We have a new submission to the Real Things Hall of Fame. The F-35 is a fighter jet that the military has. It is very expensive. Very expensive. The F-35 program costs the U.S. government / the military over $1 trillion. Like, this is one of the most expensive things in the U.S. government's budget is the program that makes these planes. Each one is incredibly valuable and expensive. And something happened during a training mission, but this jet leaves, they go on a training mission, and it's in stealth mode, apparently, and the pilot has to eject. So the pilot's like, I'm up out of here. Pilot lands relatively safely, has, I think, an injury or two that has to be tended to, but, like, is alive. But then they lost the jet. So the jet disappeared from the radar. The U.S. government's like, well, we don't know where the jet is. And so the Buford, which is the suburb not suburb, it's in South Carolina. It's by Charleston. Close enough. If people are actually from there and don't want to say that and want to say it's by Hilton Head, I know I grew up in the state. Leave my geography alone for the sake of the story, which I've now made less efficient by telling you all of those things because I can't help myself. Talk about a plane crash. Hey, we're back. So the F-35 gets essentially lost, and they're like, I don't know where this very expensive warplane went. And lo and behold, sometime the next day or later that day, it crashes somewhere, and luckily no one's hurt. But this $100 million plane is gone. Whoopsies, we crashed the plane. And this is an eyewitness account from a Charleston area television station of someone who heard the crash.
In the bathroom taking a shave, and I heard a screeching, between a screech and a whistle. I said, what in the world is this? And I heard a boom. Then my whole house shook.
White says he didn't realize it was a plane at the time, so he didn't call anybody.
The first thought came to me, I said, what's it, a meteorite coming out of space or something? And I said, well, if the airplane, it needed to be reported, but the thing was flying is too low.
The F-35B airplane wreckage created an extensive debris field.
That boy, we gotta get a drop for the voice because it might be better than Steph Curry's.
I was gonna say, I feel like we have to do a comparison. Can I pull this off with? Yeah, okay. So I had to compare or see if I had enough channels on the board to do this. But we got Steph Curry here. We got Charlie Brown here. And we got our mans here.
His is better, though.
I think his is the best one. His is definitely, it's not quite Charlie Brown. It's definitely close to Steph Curry, though.
Yes.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day. Time for the injury report, brought to you by the Centers for Advanced Orthopedics. More physicians, more locations, more advanced care centered around one thing. You visit CFAortho.com. We're live at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor, on a Burgundy and Gold game day. So, Logan, the inactives are out,
Yeah,
but
this
it's
was really
not.
interesting, actually.
It's not even just the inactives. So I get an email. It's right here on my phone. Fancy email that's got like inactives.
The way you did that was so funny. You like held it up. You're like really close.
Look,
to your
I'm
face.
official.
It's
Look
like
at
trying
me.
to get in your
Look at
camera,
me.
like the whole thing. All right.
So you got the inactives, but then it's also got like all the roster moves in terms of guys that are called up from the practice squad, and they have to name expected starters. So we actually have a little bit more than just the injury report itself. So they've called up Tariq Castro-Fields again. So Christian Holmes remains inactive. They like Castro-Fields, what he's doing on special teams, I guess, in replace of Holmes. They call up Alex Arma, which is something we should circle back to, fullback tight end. Jabril Cox they call up. Fedarian Mathis is off IR, good to go. And then Cody Barton and Sadiq Charles put on IR this week. They also officially say Tyler Larson's expected to start in place of Nick Gates at center, which is something we knew. Chris Paul, which is what you and I expected, is going to start at left guard instead of Sadiq Charles. And then Khaleke Hudson expected to start at linebacker instead of Cody Barton, which to me says Jamin Davis is playing the Mike. Khaleke will play the Will. I guess that could switch, but I don't think Khaleke has practiced at the mic at all. But that's the official word out of Landover.
Yeah, man. I think that's kind of, there's some exciting stuff in there, and I know people are like, Logan, you're excited about that. Let me just walk through it real quick. So I think Alex Arma being active is a really interesting kind of shift in mentality, right? When you bring a fullback to the roster, obviously, like I think they're going to utilize him like a tight end, like kind of much like they would with Kyle Juszczyk up in San Francisco. He'll play some inline stuff. He'll be the shift kind of move guy. But the other thing about a fullback is it allows you to add gaps plus or minus right now in a run game. And you get a guy who's built kind of more physically, built with a different mindset to kind of run the football. And I think it helps with play action pass. It does a lot of stuff for your offense. And I think having that up, it'll be interesting to see how they utilize him. Maybe he ends up playing mostly teams. I have no idea what they're thinking about, but that's something that's really exciting. The Tyler Larson, Chris Paul thing is also exciting because I just think both those guys are kind of built to run the football a little bit more, right? They're guys that are bigger. I don't want to say more physical because I think Sadiq and Gates are both physical football players.
Not from a mentality standpoint, but they're more physical, like they're stronger.
They're just bigger humans.
Yeah.
And when you watch Tyler, when he plays for this team, when he's not hurt, when you watch Chris, they do create good movement. And Chris played well against Dallas last year against a bigger kind of defensive tackle group. I think that's a thing. And then Hudson to the Will, I think, is also kind of interesting because I want to see what that looks like with those two dudes ripping around the field, because Hudson in a limited kind of appearance has looked awesome. He's looked kind of like the guy that they drafted in the 4th or 5th round a couple of years ago, and he had a sack last week, which was great. He's in man-to-man coverage. He ends up juking the tight end on a pass protection, gets a sack, and he's just running the football at a high level. So I want to see better athletes on the field, and I want to see what that looks like with Jamin at the mic, with Jamin with the green dot. So I do think there's some really compelling things to kind of keep an eye on offensively and defensively. You know, we've talked about the linebackers a little bit already, and we've talked about the offensive linemen, but the addition of the fullback, I think, might be identifying a total shift in mindset.
Yeah, I will say quickly on the linebacker thing, I think there's probably some fear that Dallas Goedert has a big day if David Mayo's out there a ton. And I assume Mayo will play some.
Yeah.
But you see what happened with Waller last week. You don't want to let Dallas Goedert get going for the Eagles. But on the fullback side of it, you know, everyone thinks of Bieniemy as this guy that had Patrick Mahomes and, you know, throwing the ball over the lot. And that's, for good reason, that's what he's brought to Washington so far. But Bieniemy was also in Kansas City when Alex Smith was there. And I'm a little bit surprised they haven't run more of that playbook. And they used to have Jamal Charles and all these backs. They would turn around and hand the ball off. Bieniemy was, you know, in Minnesota with Adrian Peterson back in the day. Like, he's got this somewhere in his brain. They've, to me, got to get to more of that just from a sheer volume of do not expose Sam so often. And you can't – it's so hard to install stuff in the middle of the year. But maybe there's some stuff that was installed that they haven't used as much that
Right.
Alex Armo was a part of in the preseason. I think a lot of us thought, based off what they did in the preseason, Armo was going to make the team initially, and then he winds up not. So I think that seeing Armo up and active also gives me that hope that they're going to be more dedicated to running the football and that they can do it better, because even just having the threat of the run makes it so much easier to pass the football because of the kinds of defenses that you then face.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think the other thing about from the first Philly matchup that I wanted to talk about is that, when you're running a lot of gun runs, when you're running a lot of stuff with multiple tight ends, a lot of balanced formations, the defense is very sound. So, they're going to play an over front. There's going to be a 9 technique over the tight end, or a 6 technique over the tight end. There's going to be a 3 technique over the guard. There's going to be a shade. There's going to be a 5 technique, right? That's an over front. Most teams will run that versus that look. The other thing is the linebackers are just going to fill in those gaps. So it's really hard to get that unbalanced shift of the linebackers. Here with the fullback, I put him right in the middle, and now I can have him block that will linebacker, and now that front side double team on that shade between the guard and the center can go back as opposed to going out. So we've made this very clear delineation for the runner, saying this combination should win, as opposed to, if I'm blocking this shade that's going to this will linebacker, now I have to stretch the will, have to kind of slow play it, have to be really patient, I have to kind of wind it back and hit this cut here. Very, very different dynamic in that regard. And I think that, again, the fullback, it does a lot for you. I don't know how much you're going to use it, but even if you use it 8 times, 10 times in a game, like, that would be a lot. And I think it shows a commitment and an identity geared towards running the football. The other thing that I was talking to Kedrick Golston about this the other day is people don't know what to do with a fullback anymore in terms of how to fit it. So it does give you a little bit of a wrinkle offensively, saying like, oh, we're in 11 personnel, now we're in 22, or now we're in 20 personnel with the 2 backs, and we've got a physical guy back there that can, again, change the strength of the run right now. So kind of some interesting things there potentially with the fullback.
Yeah, also means Sam probably be under center more, which is, I think, something that a lot of people have wanted to see.
We'll see, yeah.
It's more advantageous for the runners. Obviously, if you got a fullback, Sam's probably going to be there. But what does that do when they need to pass out of those formations, out of those personnel groupings? So lots of questions, but some very exciting potential stuff for the Commanders with the personnel they have available to them today. It's the Take Command pregame show. We are live here at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor, starting to really fill up ahead of the 1 o'clock games. When we get back, what about this Philadelphia offense? How can the Commanders' defense limit A.J. Brown? He's got 5 straight games of 125 yards receiving. Can they not make it 6? That, plus the other key questions on that side of the ball next. It's the Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day. right, welcome back. It's the Take Command pregame show on a burgundy and gold game day live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor on the Team 980, 106.7 The Fan with Logan Paulsen there. I am Craig Hoffman. Also, don't forget, you can stream us live on YouTube during the show as well. And then we are back live on YouTube roughly 90 minutes after the game. And today, Logan, we'll be live from FedEx Field, which is cool.
That'll be cool.
So I'll
Save
go to
some
the
time.
Yeah, go to the post-game press conferences, etc., and then I will pop up and we'll get back on YouTube and do our post-game instant reaction show. So that'll be on the Team 980 and 106.7 The Fans YouTube page, or YouTube pages. If you're not subscribed, please do that.
Yeah,
Just,
do it.
If you're, especially if you're watching right now, if you're one of the hundreds and hundreds of people watching right now, and you're not subscribed, there's a little button on your screen. Just click it. It's better for you. We're going to give you good content.
That's good.
All right. So the Philadelphia offense with Jalen Hurts is, obviously been one of the better offenses in the league the last couple of years. It seems like they found something a little bit last week to really get going. They've been struggling a little bit. Nice bounce back after the loss to the Jets. So what to you is the most dangerous thing about this Philadelphia offense that can obviously run it pretty well when they get going, a great offensive line, and has been just money passing the football, especially to A.J. Brown?
Yeah, I think it's just that. It's the flexibility, the ability to run the ball, to have a mobile quarterback. And I think Jalen Hurts, Kevin mentioned this briefly, might be a little bit banged up, not quite himself. But I do think that there's something to that. But he still can move around, still make plays. The offensive line's amazing. Like, when you watch them, I said this on the podcast too, there's a lot of similarities between how Jalen Hurts plays the quarterback position and how Sam played the quarterback position, that they both hold the ball for a long time, but you don't see Jalen Hurts having issues with that because the offensive line is so effective and efficient. So, they can push the football down the field with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. They can run the football with Swift. They can do all sorts of stuff. And I think that's what makes them so challenging to handle. They also can kind of go in this, four-wheel drive mode and go on 19 or 20-play drives and convert fourth downs with the brotherly shove or whatever you want to call it. So there's just so much they can do, and that to me is a sign of a very proficient, healthy offense. Is we can run the ball when we have to, we can throw the ball when we need to. We have wrinkles in the run game with the quarterback who can move that make it very hard to account for. We have this thing on fourth down that makes us elite. So to me, that's the issue that I see with them, is just they have so many ways to beat you. And I look at the first Commanders game, they did a great job, really, quite frankly, stopping the run, and you felt like they had control of the game defensively. But then they said, let's find some ways to manufacture explosive. And they're not complicated game plan nuanced explosives. It's like, our dudes are better than your dudes. Like, good luck making a play.
Yeah. A.J. Brown has obviously, as we said, been so good recently. He kind of, I don't know if it started the first of the 125 games against Washington or whether that was the second. Anyway, you got 125 yards plus receiving in 5 straight games. So much of that in the first matchup, though, came against Emmanuel Forbes. I imagine you see a lot more Benjamin St-Juste on him today. What do you think of that matchup, which we have seen in past seasons?
I actually like it a lot better. I think Benjamin St-Juste, a lot of people said, hey, he didn't play very well against the Giants. That's not my take on that. I thought he had a really good game against the Giants. I thought he was very intuitive and on his P's and Q's. And I think defensively with him in there just seems to be a better cohesiveness between him, Cam Curl, Fuller, and Percy Butler. They just seem to be on the same page a little bit more. And I think a little bit of credit probably goes to Jack. We talked about that, how you got to give credit where credit is due sometimes, of him kind of working through some of this stuff and finding stuff those guys do well. And that's exciting for me. When you get 4 dudes in the back end who are playing not excellent football, but at least more consistently, they at least look more comfortable. I think that's a very positive sign for this matchup, because Jack is going to get in those man situations. St-Juste is going to be in a man corner all the time. And I think outside of the Bears game, St-Juste has been the most consistent and kind of the most dynamic secondary player. So I want that matchup. I want them to be in that situation. I want my best coverage player on their best receiver, and he's going to get some. A.J. Brown's going to make some plays, but if we can manage that a little bit and limit kind of the free runners, him running through the secondary in space, all that kind of stuff, I feel much better about it, and I feel like this configuration in the back end gives this team the best opportunity to do that.
So here's my concern with Benjamin St-Juste, and this is a long-term concern. Like, Benjamin has done a phenomenal job of continuing to refine his technique, continuing to learn the game, being in the right spots.
Yeah.
He, from college to now, does not have great ball skills.
No.
And against a guy like A.J. Brown, where there's going to be contested catch situations, like I struggle to feel super confident with a guy who is not necessarily, I don't want to say he's competitive, but he loses a lot of the competitions at the catch point. Like, is there anything they can do about that? Or do you just hope that he has a good day in that category where he's traditionally struggled? He had no career interceptions in college. The one he's got in the NFL was Desmond Ridder throwing him a gift a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
And he does have a tendency to be in the right play to end up on the wrong side of a poster.
Yeah, and I think that I like that. I know a lot of fans are like, what? You like that? I like that he's in the right position. I like that as opposed to what we saw with Forbes in the first matchup, where there's a little bit of space, there's air, guys running free. Because I think while he does end up on posters, he ends up with a lot of PBUs. And people don't chart the PBUs. They don't remember the PBUs. You don't remember the time Jordan got blocked. You remember the time he dunked on the dude, right? Because it's the big demonstrative, offensive-driven perspective. So I think that it's going to be I'm excited to watch the matchup. I think he's going to be in competitive situations. He's going to knock the ball down a couple times. And is A.J. Brown going to catch the ball over him a couple times? 100%. Like, don't even shrug your shoulders. It's 100% right. Like, that's going to happen. But if we can manage it, if we can mitigate it, if we can make sure there's safety help in certain situations, we can confuse Jalen Carter enough that the ball's Jalen Hurts, that the ball's a little bit late.
You get Jalen Carter playing quarterback. Now we're talking.
Now that's a win for the Commanders. But I think that's what I see with that matchup. And it's not just St. Juice. It's how the defensive line can support him, how Jack can support him with pressure, how the safeties can support him. There's a lot of layers to him playing well. And I just like the way he's playing the last couple of weeks. Now, he could come out and play like he did against the Bears, which wasn't very good. It was probably his worst game of the year. But I'd say how many games they played? 7 games?
Yeah.
He's had one bad game, and the other ones have been excellent. Grading in the blue on PFF. So, and the film that I've watched supports that grade that they're giving him. So I'm excited. I think this is a better situation for the Commanders. Is it perfect? No. But is it better? Absolutely.
All right, that's Logan Paulsen. I'm Craig Hoffman here on the Team 980 and 106.7 The Fan. It's Burgundy and Gold game day. This is the Take Command pregame show. We're joined by Grant Paulsen coming up from FedEx Field at 12:30. And next, we'll take a look at our Pick 6 on my radio show on Fridays, the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. We pick 6 players we think will have the biggest impact on the Commanders game. And then we run them by Logan here on Sundays. That's next here on the Take Command pregame show.
Was it Cincinnati?
That's depends on the story, but maybe we were playing Cincinnati.
So Logan catches this touchdown.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was Cincinnati. Yep,
it was Cincinnati. So we put in this play, and it was like, I think we called it Hoss Juke or something like that. I can't remember what we called it in that offense, but Logan's on a seam, right? So he's our vertical threat, taking the top off the defense.
Digging out, guys.
We're talking in the week. I don't think we ever said it in the install with those guys, but they're like, listen, Logan's not even in the progression. He's taking the top off this thing. We're trying to work this little option route down. And they bust this coverage. And I mean, he is screaming wide open.
I wasn't even supposed to be on the play. They were supposed to sub somebody else in because I thought I was too slow to run this route. Just for the context here for everybody.
So he's screaming wide open. And I'm like, Matt, throw it at his back shoulder. You might hit him in stride. If you try and back shoulder him. Threw it right at him. He catches it. It was an awesome touchdown. Just the celebration afterwards was so much fun. For me, it was always fun celebrating the touchdowns with the guys that didn't score them all the time. Like
take that, Julio Jones.
Yeah, and I'm not, I'm saying that, but like your role for us was you did the dirty work, and when you see guys that do the dirty work get rewarded for it, that was really cool. Something I'll never forget. The caveman, and the caveman was in there in the end zone celebrating. It was awesome.
So there was this play where we call it like it was 19 Zorro. So basically like versus a 3-4 structure with an outside linebacker who is Von Miller in this case, I would get help from the fullback like on inside help. So I could be really aggressive on my reach, really violent to the reach. And so it's me and DY, and DY, is a physical son of a gun. And so we take Von Miller and we put him, like, no joke, in the water cooler. Like, we put him way out there on the sideline. And we were like, this guy ain't nothing. Like, we're going to, we were so fired up. And so it ended up being like a 25 or 30-yard gain. So we were all fired up. And then Kyle's like, all right, let's come back to it. So, like, 2 plays later, we're running again, and we're running to the right. And I was like, oh, man, we are about to tee this dude up real quick. Just tune him up nice and good. And so I go out to get him. And I'm firing off the ball. My hat's low. I'm flat back. And I swear to God, like, he was about as close as my hand was to my face. And he just disappeared into, like, mist. And he, like, swung me, and I fell right on my face. And I just was like, oh, my gosh. And, like, I went back and watched the film. And it was crazy how quickly he was able to, like, do his little basketball weave. And then, like just disappear from my vision and get inside and make the tackle. And I was like, oh, so now he's upset. So then the next play, I'm like all tentative and nervous. And I felt like Vaughn did. I watched this on film, so I knew he did this, but he does a really good job of, like, kind of like playing it like a boxer a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, kind of rope-a-doping you a little bit. So, like, he lets you get one, right? Where I got after him. He makes you look like an idiot. And then the next time I was super tentative on him, and he literally did like a double stick, like he was going to make me miss, and then just grabbed my neck and then threw me over the pile. I was like, man, this is going to be tough. I got to, like, think of a plan here in the next 15 minutes so I don't look like an idiot for the rest of the game. But, when you're playing elite football players like him, like, there's a reason they're elite. So if you get one on them, it's probably because they want. They probably because they're letting you get one.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. It's a trap.
Take Command pregame show on a burgundy and gold game day. Logan Paulsen, Craig Hoffman with you on the Team 980 and 106.7 The Fan. We're live at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. Here each and every week starting at 10 a.m. Doors open at 11. And people streaming in, getting ready to sit down, get their bets in, watch the 1 o'clock games. One update on one of those. The Chiefs, this is a 4:25 game. The Chiefs and Broncos out in Denver. Patrick Mahomes been added to the injury report. He's got the flu.
Oh, dang.
But he has been receiving IV and is expected to play. But it's not ideal for the Chiefs, obviously, and for Mahomes. It's a snowstorm. I got the flu. I got to go be outside for 4 hours and run around and play football.
That's going to be tough, man. But he strikes me as a guy who is like kind of got like that Jordan mentality a little bit. Probably play better with a little cold, little sniffle.
Yeah.
And they take good care of you when you get the flu and you're a good football player, I'll tell you.
I'm sure. All right. I would guess. I'm not sure. I don't have the flu, and I've never been a good football player.
I know. Okay. We're with it.
I report. I give analysis. I try my best, but that's not. I didn't need to play to do it. All right. Our Pick Six. We do this every single Friday on the Hoffman Show. 6 o'clock, we pick 6 players who we think are going to have the biggest, or 6 entities that are going to have the biggest impact on the game. Now, you got on my producer, Anthony Haney, about his selections.
I did, yes.
And he then tried to step it up, and he really put me in a bind because he decided to pick all 3 of his before I got to pick any of mine. So if mine stink this week, it's still Anthony's fault. The first one that Anthony
So
picked.
this first one's Anthony's?
Yeah, he's got 1, 3, and 5.
1, 3, love him. Love him. Just look at the list. Love him, Anthony. Great job this week.
Eric Bieniemy. They've got to run the football more.
Yeah.
They got to find things that Sam Howell does well and get to them early and often. That's the simple version. More complex version.
Yeah, so obviously I love the idea that Eric Bieniemy is your kind of most impactful player, or most impactful individual. How we going individual this week? With the game plan they ran against Philly last time, and just how efficient they were, what they were able to get to, the ability to stay on the field, that all comes and stems from the prep in the week and the play calling. I think we've already seen kind of maybe a way he's going to go this week with the Alex Arma addition in terms of offense, like what that could do for you. But yeah, like I think that's going to be super impactful. You mentioned some of the roles here, like the rolling, the pockets, the keepers, the play action pass, all those different things. What does he bring this week as the wrinkle? It doesn't need to be dramatic, but the thing that gives you just easier looks. So really curious to see what that's going to be. I love it because he's going to have to call a really good game. And I think it's the other thing, in addition to calling a good game, is how well are the guys prepped this week? Because one of the things we talked about with the Giants game with some of those protection things is it didn't look like they were totally ready. The plan was good, but how prepped were they actually? And so this week, are they ready to go? Are they dialed in? Is he dialed in? Is the plan effective? He's going to have a huge impact on this game.
I also wonder if there's anything more that they add, some things that they kind of took out after the preseason, the pre-snap motions, things like that. There was more of that in the first game against Philadelphia than we saw in any other game this season. So to some of that stuff that could be helpful, go back in the offense today. My first pick, number 2 in our pick 6, Jamin Davis.
Love it.
Obviously, with Cody Barton out, knew he'd be important. Didn't know at the time when we did this on Friday he would have the green dot and he would start at middle linebacker. But he is essentially important against a Philadelphia team that is, for as explosive as they are through the air, if they can sit back and run the ball all day, they're psyched about it. They've got a great O-line, and off they go. If Jamin Davis can be super impactful, and not to mention in coverage in those middle areas, and also in some matchups one-on-one in man coverage, like what are his responsibilities? Because you see Waller get him last week, you see Saquon get him last week, and those are tough matchups. That's why playing linebacker in the NFL is hard as hell. But he's got to continue to play well overall if they want to have a chance today.
1,000%, and I think, Jamin's had a really good season. Obviously, there were the 2 plays last week that everyone's going to point to, but he's been very consistent. It'll be interesting to see if he can maintain that level of consistency moving to the middle linebacker position, because there's just more that's involved. Can he get the front called correctly? Can we get the checks called correctly versus motion? Can we find those matchups? Because in this defense, at least in my observation, the will linebacker, while drawing tough matchups on a down-to-down, like their peak coverage responsibilities are probably tougher, but their down-to-down coverage responsibilities are probably easier. Does that make sense? Like they get really hard matchups versus like a slot receiver every once in a while, but the down-to-down stuff of the back going to the flat, just kind of mirroring that out there, is a little bit simpler. Middle linebacker got a lot more going on there. So can you kind of maintain that level of production you've had at the will linebacker spot going into this game? I think you look back to the Cleveland game last year where he had the green dot, where he played the mic, and that was one of his best games last year. So can he kind of come out with the same level of consistency? He's going to have a huge impact on this defense, good or negative, positive or negative. I'm hoping that it's in the positive today.
For sure. Number 3, Jahan Dotson. Can he get going today? Last time we saw Jahan, last play last week, pretty bad drop on the 4th down. Obviously could have been a better ball, but that's one Jahan's got to have. Last time we saw him against Philadelphia, he caught the game-tying touchdown where extra point sends it overtime. Ron decides not to go for 2. Ultimately, the Commanders do lose in OT. But you thought last week, despite that drop, he had his best game of the season. Maybe his legs back underneath him?
That's what it looked like to me anyway. It looked like he just was a little bit more consistent, a little bit more on tempo, a little bit more urgent, a little bit more sudden in the short area. All those things super important. Had some kind of tough catches, balls behind him on a couple sprints, able to just snag those right out of the air. So I thought that was kind of the player we were all hoping and expecting to see. And if the protection holds up, I think he ends up with probably 150 yards receiving. That's not an exaggeration. Like, that's 100% legitimate. 100 yards receiving and a touchdown. So can you do that this week against a little bit better coverage group? Not better coverage group, a coverage group that is more conservative, and therefore it's harder to kind of find those explosive plays. But can you be a little bit more physical? That was one thing in the first Philly game where I was like, man, if he's a little bit more physical here, he probably gets a better opportunity for himself. Saw a little bit of that last week. Can you continue to build? Can you continue to grow?
absolutely him being the number 2 receiver and getting some touches and being impactful in this game is going to be huge.
All right.
So that was Anthony's, huh?
That was Anthony's.
So I thought, okay, yeah. All right, that one's okay. I like that one. I like the first one a lot. That one's okay.
Yeah, and number 5 is a guy that I would have picked much earlier if Anthony hadn't put all of his picks before I made any of mine. Brian Robinson is then who I went to. Obviously, B-Rob is so important to this offense, and it's a bit of a thermometer type, or really, I guess, thermometer, not a thermostat. But he can be a thermostat. You want to be a thermostat, not a thermometer, Logan. You want to be someone who sets the temperature, not someone who just measures it. But for B-Rob, if he's involved a lot, I think that speaks well. The game flows where you want it. You're tight. You're in it. He's probably being effective. If not, maybe Chris Rodriguez gets more carries, which is fine. But you'd like the guy that is your starting running back to be super impactful on this game. And with Alex Arma up, with probably a little bit run-heavier game plan, at least that's what it would seem, I think how obviously impactful and how effective Brian Robinson is massively important to this game.
Yeah, 100%. And someone I'd kind of just tag on there is Chris Rodriguez. I think both those guys are going to get a lot of touches today. And then B-Rob, can you be patient? Can you help set some of these runs up? I think the addition of Alex Arma kind of probably fits his skill set a little bit more. I think, when you look at stuff they did in Alabama, a little bit more like that. But can you be more patient with the runs? Can you set these blocks up? Can you help the O-line out? Can you help this offense stay on schedule? Because there's times where you see him and you're like, man, that's not the right read, or cut that ball back or whatever. And, one of the things that I love about him is his vision. So can you kind of get back to that level of high-level understanding of the run game, elevating the offensive line through your vision, through your execution? And, to your point, if he's having a good football game, this team's probably doing okay. I think.
Without a doubt. Benjamin St. Juste is number 5. I would have picked him.
Yeah, probably 2 for me.
Yeah, 2 behind Bieniemy if Anthony had not stolen him. I think people get it.
I mean, right now, I think right now I would have gone Eric Bieniemy, Jamin Davis, and Benjamin St. Juste. That's how important that is, and it's probably 1A, 2A, 2B with regards to Jamin Davis and Benjamin St. Juste. I just think he's going to draw a really tough matchup. He's been playing better football. We've talked about his consistency, but this is one of the best receivers in football. And he's playing like a top 5 guy right now, A.J. Brown, and you need to have a big game. One of your best games versus a guy like that. In the last matchups, lots of double moves. We saw how that double move kind of element of the game hurt him when he was going up against DJ Moore.
Yep.
Can you be more consistent?
And he got beat on one last week with Hyatt.
Yeah, I was going to say Hyatt had one too. So, again, not as bad, contested catch, but where's that discipline? Where's that line at in terms of being aggressive, getting that PBU, and trying to dictate to the receiver while also not being overly aggressive? I'm so excited to watch him today. Of everybody available, I think that's going to be, if he has a good game, he is the most likely, I think, to kind of indicate a positive outcome for them.
Yeah, definitely. And then I said this on the show, if you give me those 5, I'm good. I don't necessarily need a 6th. It's called pick 6, so we did a 6. So with that in mind, that there's a drop off here, I said the interior of the O-line against this Philly offensive line, which is great. You do want to make them one-dimensional. You do want to make it so Jalen Hurts has to beat you as a thrower, where they just can't run the ball down your throat. If you are stout inside, that obviously is the best way to do that. And they limited DeAndre Swift very well in that first game, and they've consistently been good against the run the last 3-4 weeks after a slow start to the season in that department. John Allen has looked a lot better. Can you also have some impactful pass rushes from the inside?
I think
Big Phil Mathis is back. What does that look like? So I said the interior, if I've got to pick a 6, the interior of the offensive line the defensive line is where I went.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. I think you excluded John Ridgeway in your breakdown. He's been excellent.
Yeah, he's been great
the past couple of weeks, and he might, if they're in that Cinco front quite a bit, he's going to draw a tough matchup with maybe the best center in football. Big Phil, where you at? You know what I'm saying? Where are you at from a health standpoint, conditioning standpoint? This feels like a tough game to be coming back for, right? Interior defensive line, I think Payne on that left guard, on their right guard, is a really good matchup that he should be able to exploit. John has not had his best performances against Landon Dickerson, one of these mammoth guards that handles power rushers really well, but can you be productive there? And then I think on the flip of that, I would just kind of, to give you my 6th or 7th person here would be, what does the Commanders' interior offensive line do versus their defensive line? Specifically, Tyler Larson calling protections, ID and runs, coming off the bench. Can he be consistent? Can he close this out for you? Love to see it. And then Chris Paul is going to have a really tough matchup this week. Really tough matchup with Jalen Carter and Fletcher Cox, and I think he matches up well with Fletcher Cox, kind of power on power. I'll take that all day. But Jalen Carter's got some special to him, and so how do you handle that, and what's the game plan to help Chris Paul with that matchup?
So what's the vibe like at FedEx Field? Grant Paulsen will tell us when he joins us next. It is a burgundy and gold game day. This is the Take Command pregame show on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor, here on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. It's a Burgundy and Gold game day. Burgundy and Gold game day live coming up at the top of the hour. Denton Day join us in just a few minutes to make our picks for the game, but we head out to FedEx Field now. Welcome in our guy, Grant Paulsen. Of course, Grant and Danny, 106.7 The Fan. GP, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Doing well. Getting ready to join you out there. Is my seat, properly protected from whatever stuff Chris Russell has put on it?
It's actually really funny that you said that. I'm looking at it, and Russell has roughly 11 wires right now that are in your space. So over top of your name card and your actual seat, you guys are going to have some things to sort out. For some reason, he has a setup today. I'm not doing a bit. I could take a picture of it. Where he's got like a full microphone stand that's 2 feet tall, with a microphone, with a Comrex, with 2 laptops. It's like the guy's at home in his basement. It's amazing.
Doesn't he do? He does like an update though for some national radio.
Yeah, he does the CBS Sports updates, but normally just does it on his phone, which is always jarring because it's just the middle of the game.
Very loud, yeah.
Yeah, and Chris has one volume, and it's just like, yeah, we're here at blah blah blah. And we're like, whoa, hey buddy, you want to give us a heads up? Hey, sorry guys, about to do the update.
Yeah.
It's the best, though, for a lot of reasons, but obviously I'm a rainy guy. A few things I love. One, he is technically literally only doing his job, and mostly, like, people in the press box are, writing or quiet, so everyone looks at him with disdain and
every
they're
time.
Angry and they can't stand. But he's literally only doing his job. It's just that his job
Right.
isn't to write. So because he's a radio guy, like, everyone hates his guts. So that's funny. That's number one.
Team radio
Number
forever.
Two, exactly. Number 2 is he is very, very loud. And so that's going to, during the game, it's very quiet. You have that to contend with. And then the last thing that's great is generally in that role, it's very, here are the pieces of information you need. A team scored. The scoring drive was this many plays and yards. Here are some stats. He editorializes and tells you that people are terrible and
He does do that.
Can't tackle.
Yeah.
And it's really, really funny.
But it's also crazy. Like the volume in conjunction with the editorializing is the thing that makes it, and it's a nice thing, like kind of to break up the monotony of the press box.
Yeah, it
does. It's must-see television.
Yeah.
Like 3 or 4 laughs a game.
Professional transition coming in 3, 2. So, Grant, in terms of volume at the game today, what's the scene like? Paint it for us. How much green is there? This is the first game, I think, unless I missed the announcement, that there's no sellout. We know there's a ton of Eagles fans that are going to come down 95. What's it look like out there?
So, unfortunately, I hope I'm right in correcting you. I'm pretty sure it is sold out, actually.
Okay.
I
may have just missed that announcement.
Well, here's why you missed it, is because it's not sold out by people that are from around here, I don't think. There's a lot of green, man. I mean, the visiting side, and this is always the case during pregame warm-ups, obviously.
Right.
But you have all of the Eagles fans that come into the parking lot that maybe didn't bring all their tailgating gear down 95. And so the home fans are going to get in a little closer to kickoff. But I was just talking to Rick Snyder. We were looking at the home side, and it is littered with green already. So it's going to be – I think it would be a surprise if there are 50% Commanders fans here based on what I'm seeing right now.
Oh, wow.
Yikes. That's not ideal. So the main thing we've been talking about today is kind of where this team is at emotionally. Obviously, a tumultuous week, a noisy week, trade rumors, coming off a terrible loss, all this stuff. Yet this is the time of year that Ron Rivera's teams have done well in Washington. They've also typically played their best when their backs are most against the wall. So which direction do you think it goes? They give in and succumb to the pressure finally, or do they find a way to bounce back today?
Yeah, I think this sets up really well for the prototypical Rivera era late October, early November bounce, where everyone thinks that the walls are about to cave in and the floor is about to fall. And the bottom's going to come out from underneath of everybody, and they get either a big win or play a really good team tough. Obviously, they beat the Eagles' second game last year in Philadelphia. They took them to overtime, should have gone for 2, may well have beaten them earlier this season. And so now they've got another crack at them. I think the Eagles will win. They're just more talented. They're a better team. This is a really good defense. Washington's offensive line going through some changes now. The number 9 defense in yards per play in the league they're facing. They're top 5 against the run, and the Commanders really haven't been able to get Brian Robinson going. at all here the last few weeks. They're number 7 against the pass. And the one thing they don't really do is pick off passes. They're 31st in interception rate, about 1% of passes getting picked off. But they just added Kevin Byard to help out, a safety with 27 career interceptions. I can tell you guys, just watching warm-ups, he was running around with the first team. So expect him to play a lot today. But I don't love the matchup. I just think you're a home underdog in a division game. Generally, you want to lean toward picking the team to cover. And on top of that, this has been the entire Rivera process here, has been these types of games when you think it's about to get ugly, he kind of duct tapes everything together, and it doesn't ever really get bad enough to the 3, 4, 5-win seasons that have led to firings of guys like Jay Gruden.
Right, and so let's obviously that's the emotional element of it. Do you defensively, like how do they contain Jalen Hurts? How do they contain the passing game really? Because I think they, for whatever reason, each time they play, they do a pretty good job of stopping the run. What's your thoughts on containing the passing game for the Philadelphia Eagles?
I think I would just try not to give up anything deep, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to probably play as much as I can to demand that Jalen Hurts takes his chances underneath and force him to make 5 to 10 yard throws, kick and dunk his way down the field. Because he's a guy that likes to be aggressive. You've seen it against Washington specifically, where A.J. Brown's gotten behind everybody frequently this past game. Emmanuel Forbes, who's not going to be covering him much ideally, but you saw it the last time. Hurts was here at FedEx Field last year. We saw it on a fumble that they lost, in fact, on a 50-plus yard completion at the Link last year. I mean, they've been able to hit verticals and explosives. They've had this defense's number. So I would probably play a couple deep safeties, make them – it's a trend in the league, frankly. Like everyone's essentially – and I think the reason the points are down, guys, they're making teams go on 12, 13-play drives. They're not giving up the huge play. That would be my philosophy. I'd be okay with DeAndre Swift carrying the ball a bunch and averaging 4.5, 4.7, as long as you're not giving up 6, 7, 25-yard completions like they have when they played the Eagles.
All right, Grant, you know how we always end this. You kind of gave us a nice summation of where you're at, but ultimately, rubber meets the road. Who you got?
I'm going to say Philly wins. I'm going to say 27-23. I think Washington, maybe it's a late backdoor cover, but I think inevitably the game's tighter than people think. I think the Eagles win the football game.
All right, that is Grant Paulsen with us from FedEx Field, GPC in just a little bit. And apparently Rooster was on nationally this morning. He was on nationally until noon. So if you could just help him kind of get his national radio show out of my small laptop space, I would appreciate the assist.
So high maintenance, jeez.
Right now, there's actually just a plate of nachos there. The wires are gone.
Okay. Wow. Look at Rooster's cleaning up all by himself.
Rooster's
How efficient.
an animal. Good
He
for
is.
Rooster.
All right. See you in a little bit, Grant.
Take care.
That's Grant Paulsen with us. Of course, check him out tomorrow, 2 to 6:30 on 106.7 The Fan. When we get back here on a Burgundy and Gold game day, we check back in with Denton Day in our D.C. studios for Burgundy and Gold Game Day Live. We get our picks in as well as our keys to the game. And then it's time for us to head over to FedEx Field. Time for everyone here at Tap Sports Bar to get their eyes on their favorite TV, watch their game of choice. Burgundy and Gold Game Day rolls on next here on The Fan and the Team 980. Wrapping up the Take Command pregame show here on a burgundy and gold game day. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen with you here at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor, which is quite full at the moment. Logan, I feel like every time I look up, there's a new
More
table
people.
that has people in the chairs, which is great. We love to see it. Love to see the energy. Love to feel this build towards kickoff. And back in our DC studios, we have the guys who will take you through the game on the radio, Denton Day and Linnell Willingham. What's up, boys?
What up, fellas? How we living?
Doing well, doing well. So it's time for our keys to the game, our predictions, our players to watch is always where we start. So, Denton, start with you. A player to watch today for the Washington Commanders.
I mean, there's a bunch of different directions we can go here. I think I'm going to take the very corny route and say Sam Howell. I think we need to make sure he doesn't get sacked 10,000 times. If he doesn't get sacked 10,000 times, I think all four of us will have a much better day this weekend.
I'll certainly have a much better week on the radio, not having to do another 17 segments on the protection issues.
On the sack percentage and all these weird things that you never thought you'd talk about when you took this job.
No, not my favorite radio. That is for sure. All right, Linnell, who's your player to watch this week?
I saw as I was getting ready this morning, Chris Paul going to get the start at left guard, and going up against this Philadelphia interior, I'm curious to see how he handles himself and what the game plan is, and do they get him on the move at all, or what are their expectations for him? I want to see how he plays today. Excited to see him in the lineup.
Yeah, me too. I think that's a really good one. I'm going to say Benjamin St. Juste. It's someone we've talked about quite a bit. I think, if he has a good game, I think this defense will be in a pretty good spot. And I think he's going to draw a tough matchup with A.J. Brown. I think physically he's probably the best corner we have in terms of someone who's equipped to handle that kind of size, weight, speed that he brings to the table. Obviously, it's going to be hard to completely contain A.J. Brown, but I think if he plays well, bodes really well. Also, someone else I'd just like to point out, and kind of piggybacking off Linnell's, is Tyler Larson. If he has a good game and does some good stuff, I think that's going to be pretty impactful for this run game and for the protection stuff.
Man, there's so many of the offensive weapons that I'm so curious. I could make a case for a Curtis Samuel because Bradley Roby's out. He's probably got the best matchup. There's all kinds of kind of interesting things they could do with him, get him involved in the running game. That's one. Robinson and Gibson, how are they used? That's all great. But the guy I'm going to go with is Terry.
Terry.
Typically we take Terry off the board, but after his comments this week, and seeing how ridiculously correlated, causation's another thing, but correlation, when he's involved, they score.
Yeah.
When he's not involved, they really struggle. So how involved is Terry McLaurin? That is who I will officially pick with my player to watch, Logan.
No, I love that. I love that pick. I think, again, it's usually he's off the board, but, versus this defense versus Darius Slay, versus that matchup, versus the protection issues, can you hit some of those fade shots early? I think they're going to probably be ready for it, but can you find ways to get him touches? And can he kind of cultivate those explosive plays for this offense? We haven't talked about that a bunch, but this offense has not been overly efficient at providing, especially the last couple of weeks, those explosive plays. And when they do, they're much more efficient. So
for sure,
he's a big explosive element for that.
All right, keys to the game. The way we do this is we pick a statistic. If the Commanders can blank or hold the Eagles to blank, they will win the football game. Denton Day, your key to the game.
I think the key to the game is on the defensive side. I think it's forcing turnovers from Jalen Hurts. He has been a much more human quarterback this year. He didn't turn the ball over at all last year, but he's done it much more frequently. If you can force a couple of turnovers, I'd say at least 2, potentially 3. I think that puts you in a good spot because that means the defense doing a good job holding that Philadelphia offense. So I'm going to say force some turnovers. You got to get at least 3 to win this game.
All right, Linnell.
I'm going to go to the running game, and I understand that I've been on the record saying that the running game is a lifestyle choice, right? I think for Washington to win today, Brian Robinson must touch the football on the ground at least 25 times. I think it's him. I know we've seen Chris Rodriguez get implemented into this. I think they have a good stable of backs, and they need to find a way to use all 3 of their skill set. But I think B-Rob should be the focal point.
So we should just give him 25 touches right away, right? Right out the gate.
Just first 25 plays.
25 consecutive touches.
That's how that works.
And if it happens, though, that means Washington's in the game. That means it's relatively close, and they maintain that balance offensively. Last time these two teams played, the play-action pass stuff was really effective for them. So if they can get to that and then maybe try to switch something else up. I mean, I think they'll be in a good spot.
I do also love Linnell saying, I'm on record as saying something that Logan Paulsen's been saying for ever on the Take Command podcast, that running the football is a lifestyle. Good person anyway, Linnell.
No, we're with you. We're on the same page, Linnell.
What you got, Logan?
So for me, I think explosive plays defensively is something that I want to see that number come way down. If we can keep that number to two explosive plays, so that's a 20-plus yard play, run or pass, keep that number way down, make Philadelphia go on those long drives. I think they're going to be in a pretty good position to win this football game.
So I've used this number before. I'm going to use it again. If the combined sacks and turnovers from Sam Howell is below 4, which has not happened all season.
That's
that means, right?
You're crazy.
If they could get
You're crazy.
if they could get just take 4 sacks and no turnovers from Sam Howell, I think they're in this football game. They haven't been able to do it all year, yet they've won 3 times.
Yeah.
But if they can do that, that is key. Obviously, if he takes no sacks and it's 4 picks, that's not going to be good. But I'm going to hedge my bets and say that it's probably going to be more sacks than interceptions no matter what. Famous last words. I'm sorry, everybody. All right, let's go around the room here one final time. Who do you got in the Commanders-Eagles game today?
Who's bold?
Yeah.
Is anyone going to be bold?
Let me know
here?
now.
Wait, what do you mean bold? Is this
I'm
like
picking the Commanders?
I'm picking the Commanders.
Are you picking the Commanders?
I'm not picking the Commanders.
You're smarter than that.
I mean, if
No.
my gambling instincts would say that you do pick them because America is going to be on Philadelphia and
Sure.
you kind of sway away from the public. So I'd pick them to cover the spread, but I wouldn't pick them to win the game. It feels like these two teams are going opposite directions.
Huh.
When they lost to Philadelphia a couple of weeks ago, it felt like the greatest loss that we've had in years here. Everyone was so excited. They looked so good. They just came up short. And it's funny how weeks make a big difference, and it feels like all hell's breaking loose. The fire is inside, and we're sitting at the table telling ourselves everything is fine. I think Philadelphia wins this one. I think they do it by 2 scores. I'll go 28 to 14.
Yeah, Washington is probably the most inconsistent team in the National Football League, and when you lose to Chicago at home the way they did, and then you lose last week on the road against New York, I don't trust them anymore. I wonder, like Denton said, I think it's 2 teams going in 2 different directions right now. All the smoke around Washington this week with the trade deadline and the personnel changes that they're having up front along the offensive line, it just seems like a lot's going on right now. I don't know if they respond well to that. I think Philly wins big. I say 29-13.
29-13, yeah.
Wow.
I'm kind of in that same boat. I really believe that they match up really well with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think defensively, for whatever reason, the defensive line comes out and plays really well. I think offensively, the protections, the concepts that EB ran the first time match up really well with the coverage structure. To me, I'm more worried about the emotional side of this.
Fragility
kind of,
seems to be there right now. Yeah.
And so if there's any type of adversity early, I think it probably doesn't go well for the Commanders. If they can come out early, strike first, get a defensive stop, get the momentum kind of in their favor, I think it'll feel very, very different. But my confidence level in that happening is not very high. So I'm going to say probably 30 to 17 is what I'm going to say, is what it feels like if it swings the other way. But I do think this matchup, I wouldn't be surprised if it's close. I just don't know if the emotional stability is there for the team.
So when you say, is anyone going to be bold and pick them? No, but I would not be surprised if they win. This is the time of year that they tend to play a little bit better under Rivera. When nobody thinks they've got a chance is when they all of a sudden do it, which makes it all the more frustrating. That's not actually a compliment to them. It's like, hey, could you guys play well when you're expected to? That would be cool. But I'll say 30-24 Philadelphia. Commanders in it late. Ultimately, Philly does get the win, but Commanders get the cover.
Yeah.
30-24. I have no idea what I picked on Friday. I don't even know if we picked a score on Friday.
No.
But that's what I'm going with here 5 minutes before kickoff. For kickoff and everything that follows, Denton Day and Linnell Willingham have you covered on Burgundy and Gold Game Day Live. Logan and I will see you back on YouTube about 90 minutes after the game, 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980's YouTube page for the Take Command Instant Reaction Show. And then, of course, do not miss the Take Command podcast all week long. Subscribe wherever you get your pods. I'll see you all tomorrow on the radio as well on the Team 980 at 4. For Logan, I'm Craig. Thanks for listening to the Take Command pregame show, Burgundy and Gold Game Day Live.